starting soon. Okay, so we are starting now. Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third Central Asian Research Forum on Sustainable Development and Innovation. And we are very happy to see you all at our fourth session, which is dedicated to Sustainable Development Goal number 4. Sustainable Development Goal number 4 is the education goal, and it aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And we are very happy that we today can discuss and share with you various projects that aim to promote sustainable development through education in Central Asia. And we have quite a few distinguished speakers and guests with us. So let me introduce to you our speakers today. First, it will be Ms. Ainur Karbozova. She is the president of the JSC Center for International Programs, the administrator of the Bolshak Presidential Scholarship. We also have with us Mr. David Hardy, who is the chair of Education Committee of the British-Kazakh Society. We are also pleased to welcome Ms. Meirgul Alpysbayeva, the Education National Professional Officer working at the UNESCO Almaty Cluster Office for Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Then the floor will be taken by Dr. Gulmira Kurganbayeva. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Ultik Ustaz Online Academy, a new corporation that promotes teaching excellence in Kazakhstan and beyond. We are happy to see with us Mr. Rowan Kennedy, the British Council Country Director for Kazakhstan. Ms. Elmira Obry will be here with us, and she is the head of tech of the Bureau for Continuing Professional Development at Astana International Financial Center. Then the floor will be taken by our PhD researchers, and I'm happy to present to you our researchers, who are Ms. Natalya Hanley, the PhD researcher in education at UCL, Ms. Camilla Rowland, the PhD researcher in inclusive education, University of Cambridge, and the founder of the School for All Inclusive Education Center. I'm happy to present to you Ms. Natalia Radko, a PhD researcher at Henley Business School, University of Reading. We also have with us a PhD researcher, Ms. Zhanna Tuteshova, a researcher in education at the University of Bristol. Also, we are happy to have with us Ms. Aybarshim Bolatova, a teacher at the Nazarbayev Intellectual School. And also me, Khalida Azhigulova, I'll be the moderator of the session. I'll be also presenting at the end of today's roundtable. I would like to note that because we have quite a wonderful number of distinguished speakers, 12 speakers, first we will have the floor for presenters, and then at the end we will start our discussion. The presentations will be made in English, but the discussion will be moderated in both languages, English and Russian, depending on the language in which the question will be asked. Also, for the information of our participants, you have an opportunity to ask your questions during the presentations. Please use a chat box if you have connected with us through Zoom, or on our webpage on Facebook, the webpage of Kazakhstan PhD Association UK. We have a live stream of today's session, and you can ask questions below that live stream. And as a moderator, I'll be monitoring those questions, and we will ensure that we will answer them during today's session. So let's start, and I'm happy to give the floor to the first speaker and guest of our session, Ms. Ainur Karbozova, the president of the JSC, the Center for International Programs. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Khalida. Just to show that I am in line with the agenda of the session, I do have this method with me. So I do have, so you do have this picture on your background. I do have it as a magnet with me, just to say I'm in line with the agenda of the session today, Sustainable Development Goals in Education. First of all, I would like to express our gratitude to the Kazakhstan PhD Students Association in the UK for your high commitment and for engaging us in these challenging times to discuss one of these important issues of our globe's development for the nearest future. And sustainable development goals, I think, is very much in line with the presidential scholarship program, and it is not only about the force goal, but I think scholarship presidential scholarship does contribute massively to all of the 17 goals successful implementation by its graduates returned back to the country and massively contributing by their knowledge and skills received in the best universities of the world to the economic development of Kazakhstan in particular. I would like to structurize my information today on where we are now, just to make all the participants aware on the current development of the Bolshak Presidential Scholarship and highlighting some of the important changes we are going to introduce to the implementation of the Bolshak Presidential Scholarship in the nearest future in terms of admissions and selection processes, education organization and plans, which I'm sure will be of high interest. So we are all well aware that in 26 years of Bolshak Presidential Scholarship development, it did prove it was a huge success for our country's development, and it does showcase that the first president, founder of the scholarship, Mr. Nazarbayev, when introducing back in the early 90s when our country was just getting independence and we were facing quite very much challenging times both politically and socially. But despite those challenges, our first president did make this strategic decision, and he showcased how it is important to invest in the human capital to ensure sustainable development of our country. And in these 26 years of Bolshak scholarship development, more than 13,000 scholarships were awarded. As of today, we have almost 11,000 graduates contributing in their specific areas to the economic development of our country. Those are different areas of in humanitarian, in humanities, in social sciences, in engineering, technical specialties, medicine. What we are now today, Bolshak scholarship had never continuously developed, and it was always going to improvement. And at this stage of development, we're also looking at some of the important changes to be introduced this year in accordance with the new rules of selection process. So just to brief you on what are those changes. We are first of all further improvement and further increasing the requirements for applicants in terms of level of foreign languages knowledge, level of state language knowledge, level of the most important change in terms of making access, wider access and equal access to quality education. The important change is that from 2020, applicants will be required to be self-placed on the priority specialties and in accordance with the list of the universities recommended to study under the Bolshak scholarship program. Another important change is the I was told that my voice, is it better now? I'm sorry. Um, I was telling about some of the important changes we are looking at introducing very much recently, and those are further increasing requirements in terms of level of foreign languages, level of state language, and also all the applicants are required to be self-paced to, in accordance with the priority specialties recommended to study under the Volosha Presidential Scholarship, but also to the universities recommended to study under the Volosha Presidential Scholarship. Another important change for this year, expected to be introduced by the new rules, is the way priority specialties will be set up. It is more of a targeted list for us now, so the training will be also targeted training in accordance with the real-time needs of the labor market and the midterm analysis of the labor market made by the labor ministry of Kazakhstan. But also priority specialties list will include some of the needs we received from all the members of the labor market, including government agencies, different public organizations, educational institutions, regional councils, and so on. So we did try this year to cover those real-time needs analysis of the labor market, but also cover all the needs from key participants of the labor market and key industries of our country, so we can ensure that at the end we will have highly demanded specialists with relevant knowledge and skills in a very midterm future as the Volosha graduate. My key message would be this time on the PhD applicants to grasp this opportunity of speaking to you today, encouraging applicants on PhD level to apply for Volosha as sustainable development goals does encourage science and innovations and massive development. For this, Volosha as the provider of wider access to quality education does encourage and invite all Kazakhstan researchers to apply for Volosha scholarship this year. As unfortunately, history of the Volosha scholarship does show that the number of PhD applicants in these 20 years of history wasn't that high as we wished to, so it's more than 300. So overall, the number of graduates in PhD education level we do have with us is more than 140, and same number of the current Volosha scholarship PhD programs in more than 16 of the countries of education we have with us, but it is rather small number, and taking this full opportunity, I would like to encourage all the young researchers to apply for the Volosha scholarship to explore new opportunities and to contribute to the scientific and innovative development of Kazakhstan. Despite we do have a small number of PhD graduates, but they do contribute massively to the scientific innovative development of Kazakhstan. I can bring some of the bright examples, and for example, those researchers on the level of leading researchers now work at the Nazarbayev University, the National Scientific Cardiac Surgery Center, Center for Earth Sciences, National Center for Biotechnology, National Medical Holding, Eurasian National University, Kazakh National University, Al-Farabi, Kazakh National Medical Universities, and so on and so forth. And important point to stress is that our PhD applicants do contribute to creating some of the innovative clusters in their organizations, thus contributing to the development of implementation of the sustainable development goals in all the different 17 sustainable SDGs. In the engineering sector, for example, we would like to highlight such achievements as unique developments in the field of plant quarantine and protection, development of mobile robots, creation of an automated control system for energy traction, which is one of the largest energy conservation projects in the Kazakhstan national company, a free service for finding doctors aimed at informing the public about medical services, medical centers, and doctors in Kazakhstan, which is very much timely in this quarantine time. In medicine, we do have graduates of scholarship program with their own contributions, and some of the new approaches to the treatment of breast cancer. With more than 70 studies on obstetrics and gynecology carried out by Russia graduates, and modern epidemiological monitoring system for main chronic non-infectious diseases introduced by Volashak graduates. Unique operation was performed to remove a brain tumor while maintaining consciousness of the patient to control speech and motor function during the operation. And we can list, I mean, it's difficult to stop while listing all of these achievements made by Volashak graduates, but my key message would be today that in order to sustainable development goals set by the United Nations ensured for successful implementation, Volashak scholarship needs more PhD applicants to become part of us. So I would encourage and ask all the participants today to send our messages that Volashak is encouraging and inviting the PhD applicants to use this unique opportunity to be part of the Volashak scholarship, which has proved its success. And back in 2015, it was actually recognized by the research made by the British-Kazakh and the German academic services exchange services as one of the best international scholarship programs in terms of providing wider access to quality education, the organization of education, and after studies in terms of employment of its graduate. So I think that's all for me, and I will be happy to ask questions of the audience and participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Ainur Karbozova. We would like to thank Ms. Ainur Karbozova and also the Center for International Programs for your continuous support to our PhD students who have the opportunities to do the excellent research projects abroad, including in the United Kingdom. And they can also adapt their projects to achieve sustainable development in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. Just to mention, there are over 100 members of our association, and 80% of our PhD students in the UK are studying under the scholarship granted by Volashak and by the Center of International Programs. Thank you so much. So now I pass the floor to Mr. David Hardy, the Chair of Education Committee of the British-Kazakh Society. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, and good day to everyone in the UK and in Kazakhstan. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be invited to speak, and I hope the sound is better than it was for the last speaker. It was a very poor quality sound. I'm chairman of the British-Kazakh Society Education Committee, which has only very recently been set up. The Education Committee has the objective of facilitating communication and networking for members and interested parties in the post-secondary school education systems in Kazakhstan and the UK. In particular, we're focusing on universities. As the Education Committee develops, the networks may be used to partner UK university expertise with that in Kazakhstan. We're conscious that there is much activity already, and our role is to complement that, not to try and compete. The committee is developing. It'll comprise individuals representing UK and Kazakh science, research and education, UK and Kazakh business, and UK and Kazakh government and policy areas. So, universities, business, and government in partnership. Why? Why those three areas? Well, there are three reasons. Too often, universities don't exploit their intellectual property. They don't transfer new technological and scientific developments into commercial opportunities for the greater good of all. We often hear that not all universities produce the graduates with the skills and knowledge needed by business and employers. In the UK, business leaders repeatedly raise this problem and have been doing so since the 19th century. And given the key role of governments in the university sector, it's vital to involve government too. So this explains our wish to focus on those university business government partnerships. And that's also about sustainability, the ability to remain relevant through responding to the needs not just of government and research bodies, but of business and the wider economy. The committee will maintain links with the Kazakhstan PhD Association in the United Kingdom, and I'm delighted that Natalya Hanley has kindly agreed to serve on the committee. The British Council in Kazakhstan, and I'm delighted to meet up with Rowan Kennedy today. The First President's Foundation, Bolshak, Nazarbayev University, the Academy of Public Administration, plus other important and interested parties. The committee plans to have a number of events during each year, including guest speakers. The focus will be on what society members want. Various specialist strands will be considered, from policy through capacity building to subject-specific activities. If there is a demand, these may lead to the development of special interest groups, such as distance teaching and learning and the use of technology-based learning, and academic networks where people in different institutions and countries work together on areas of common interest. I'm delighted at the involvement of Loughborough University in this event, partly because of previous links facilitating master's courses in Singapore, partly because of its close links with business and the vocational sector, but also because I want the Education Committee to operate regionally in the UK and be less London-centric. I'd like to come back to that triangular model of universities, business, and government. There's a need for universities, government, and business to work together. This is about what is taught and how. It's about technology transfer and the commercialization of research. It's to both develop and exploit new partnership opportunities. There's a need also to engage with the vocational sector so that there is a workforce at all levels with the skills and knowledge needed to take new opportunities forward. There's a need to be aware of how other countries address these various things, but not to slavishly follow what other countries do, to have the confidence to develop one's own approach, building on the work of others where it works for your own country. And I think all of this requires a more entrepreneurial approach in the university sector. Later on, Natalya Radko will speak about the entrepreneurial ecosystem of a university, and I look forward very much to hearing what she has to say. In my view, to make the university business government partnership work in the interests of all, to be responsive to customer needs, whoever those customers may be, government, individual students, businesses, research councils, we need a culture of enterprise in our universities. What do I mean by a culture of enterprise? For me, it's about individuals taking responsibility, having confidence, seeking alternative and new ways of doing things. It isn't just about setting up a new business or about business studies. That enterprise culture can apply across the entire university. It can apply in the management of the institution, in its strategic planning. It can apply in classics and in the arts, as well as science and technology. And of course, it can apply in management and business studies. An enterprise culture isn't a bolt-on. It's not some additional element you simply add. It needs to be part of the mainstream, part of the institutional focus. It's about the skills students need to generate ideas. It's about being creative and innovative. It's about being confident and energetic. It's about being risk-aware and decisive, about being communicative and collaborative, and about being versatile and determined. It's about creating graduates who leave a university with the capability to make proactive, positive, and responsible contributions to society. And it's about links with business that ensure the knowledge and skills to take forward new ideas and innovations are present in all of those graduates. So, a new committee and a new opportunity. We aim to facilitate communication and networking for members and interested parties, focusing on the university, business, and government sectors. We aim to operate across the UK regions. A culture of enterprise underpins what we do and what we're about. And last but not least, we must remember that the Education Committee is a committee of the British-Kazakh Society, which is a friendship society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Indeed, it has been an enlightening speech, and we're very happy to see that there is a already ongoing partnership and cooperation between the UK and Kazakhstan in the area of education, and many thanks for establishing this new committee on education under the British-Kazakh Society. So I believe we will be cooperating even more in this area. Thank you. And now I'm pleased to give the floor to Ms. Meirgul Alpysbayeva, the Education National Professional Officer at the UNESCO Almaty Cluster Office for Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Thank you, please.
Thank you, Khalida. Khairlı gün. Good afternoon, dear participants. I'm very much pleased to be here and to participate in this session and in this on this important topic. My today's presentation will be more conceptual one, since UNESCO at global level coordinates monitoring of the achievement of SDG 4, which is ensuring quality education and the lifelong learning opportunities for all. Today I would like to bring the attention to the researchers, to the participants about the two important concepts I would like to focus on. And first, I would like to start with challenges and trends that are going on currently and our today's world face. And as many of you probably heard, we live in a VUCA world, that is in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And there are also different challenges and trends going on, such as digital transformation, globalization, urbanization, and etc. And that requires from us a profound transformation of the labor market of the work we do, and how we learn and teach, and thus also the transformation of the education system, and the requirement that there is a need for the new set of skills in the labor market. And to address these challenges, as you know, 5 years ago, all UN member states, they adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And their key principles is to leave no one behind by 2030. And one of them is SDG 4, Sustainable Development Goal 4 on education, on quality education. And as today's our session focuses on this, I would like to actually also talk about how, in fact, all the SDGs are interlinked and very much interdependent on each other, and also the centrality of quality education. And as you can see from this slide and connected dots, and I think no one even would doubt that education plays a central role in achieving and also in solving many of these challenges in the society, in the world. And for example, without providing equal access for every girl and boy at all levels of education, we cannot achieve gender equality in education. Or, for example, without educating and providing knowledge and skills and to live healthy lifestyles and to have safe, healthy behaviors among young people, we cannot, of course, reach the goal that is related to health. Or without educating young people on responsible behavior in the environment, and that how it would affect the environment, we of course cannot achieve one of the targets related to climate change. And this of course continues and continues. And by this, I would like to show and to say that actually education plays this key role in achievement of all SDGs. And I would like to focus on one of the targets of SDG 4, that is oriented to ensure that all learners by 2030, they should acquire knowledge, skills, values, and attitude that are necessary for sustainable development. And these two key concepts, education for sustainable development and global citizenship education, are key to achieve and to develop these skills and knowledge that are necessary for sustainable development. And these two concepts are not new, they existed before. For example, education for sustainable development was called environmental education or global citizenship education. It was peace education or education for international understanding. It's just with the adoption of all SDGs, they become now more comprehensive. And these both concepts, they are also very much linked, and they look at three learning dimensions. One is cognitive, and that's how at cognitive level we teach our learners and give our learners the knowledge, understanding, and critical thinking of the things happening around, and all this about the different topics such as poverty, gender equality, sustainable consumption, etc. How we talk about this with learners, and also then at socio-emotional level, how we instill among learners this sense of belonging to common humanity, and how their actions and behavior can actually affect at one level and then can affect at other different levels, not only within their own society where they live, but also in other parts of the world. These two concepts, they actually take these three learning dimensions and also look at developing 8 cross-cutting key competencies that are necessary in the 21st century, and we also say that are necessary for sustainable development and for achieving all SDGs. I'm not gonna stop on all these competences, and as David mentioned, there are also other key competences, and they are very similar and connected. And for example, it's just to mention system thinking competency, and to live in this very interconnected world, we need this system thinking. Why? Because that's also, again, to understand that the world is complex, and what we do now can affect another one in this place or another place. Or anticipatory competency, for example, that is how to actually project and how you actually develop those skills that are necessary and build possible future scenarios, and how you're going to act in these possible scenarios. And that is very much needed skills, especially in this time of uncertainties and etc. And UNESCO issued this, there are different guidelines and guidebooks issued by UNESCO, and that are looking into these 2 concepts of education for sustainable development and global citizenship education, and how you actually cover all the topics that are addressed by all SDGs, and they both have their own thematic focus. For example, ESD, education for sustainable development, and in short it's ESD, we call it ESD. It focuses on all themes of SDGs, and there are already developed certain topics and learning objectives at all levels of education. And while global citizenship education looks at developing certain skills that are necessary to prevent, for example, violence or extremism, stigma and discrimination, and also promote more peaceful societies. So these 2 concepts are at the heart of achieving all SDGs. And actually one can also ask the question, do all the education systems, especially in Central Asia, in Kazakhstan, are we covering through the content of education, through curriculum, these skills? Are we covering it or not? And this is what we are also looking at UNESCO, and there have been different reports done. And actually next year there will be a 5-year progress review of achieving of SDG 4 in Asia Pacific region, and including in Central Asia and Kazakhstan. So it will be very interesting to see, but for now, I wanted to show this snapshot from the Sustainable Development Report dashboards in 2019. It actually looks at all countries and their status of achieving SDGs. And I just wanted to show that and conclude through Kazakhstan's example is that education plays central role in achieving all SDGs, and especially those 2 concepts I talked about. Why? Because they cover all the challenges and issues that are tackled in all SDGs. And for example, without tackling such problems as gender stereotypes in through education content, or without developing certain skills necessary for healthy lifestyles, we cannot achieve other SDGs that are related to health, or without instilling those skills that are oriented towards sustainable consumption, we cannot also achieve other SDGs that are related, for example, for sustainable consumption and production. So it goes on and goes on, and for example, in this example of Kazakhstan, to achieve and all other SDGs, that is for us to live in a sustainable society, we need to tackle all these issues through education and through these 2 concepts. And That's it from my side. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, dear Meirgul. Indeed, it was really interesting to learn more what UNESCO is doing to promote sustainable development through education in Central Asia. Thanks a lot for this fantastic presentation. And now I'm also quite pleased to give the floor to Dr. Gulmira Kurganbayeva, the CEO of Ultik Ustaz Online Academy, the academy that promotes teaching excellence in Kazakhstan. And we'll be very happy to listen to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be a partner of this great conference. Today, I want to focus our attention to training of teachers. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The main idea of my report now in this moment, we as a country must significantly increase the number of qualified teachers. And in different regions of Kazakhstan, we should open and create the new centers for teaching excellence. For what reason? Look at the situation today about schools. If we analyze the schools, we can see all design of academic programs. We should update program, but we have very strong lack of methods, new technologies, handouts, materials, and etc. The lack of new teaching technologies, especially interactive methods like free classroom, PBL, active learning, team teaching, binary seminars, it's very big weaknesses for our especially secondary schools. A lack of infrastructure, no modern design, and new ecosystems in our schools. A lack of online learning, especially in the current period, educational platforms, technologies, methods, a lack of qualified specialists in the field of e-courses and development of the LS courses, a lack of blended learning, a weak culture of sharing, a weak culture of collaboration, integration between schools, between universities and schools. And if we analyze the pedagogical universities and analyze the framework of these universities, we also can see very strong weaknesses. First of all classic programs at our universities. There is no attention on future pedagogical professions. For example, what kind of professions? Managers of educational program, academic program designers, game teachers, game masters, developers or coordinators of educational online platforms, moderators, tutors, coaches, digital educators. And about teaching technologies, they're also in very bad situation. Weak integration with schools, a low level of cooperation between university educators and school teachers, a lack of online training, and if you analyze pedagogical universities, you can see also very weak online training and technical equipment. And if you analyze the structure of trainers, educators in pedagogical universities, you also can see that the age of our educators, it's over 60 and very low share of middle-aged teachers and share of young teachers. What we need to do in the education system in Kazakhstan? I think that we start to create a new types of centers for teaching excellence, and we must establish new types of pedagogical universities. What kind of pedagogical universities? Which can nurture a young teacher, but not only, and develop working teachers throughout lifelong learning, forms a new education ecosystem and academic networks. And these centers for teaching excellence or pedagogical universities must be for, especially for rural areas, a methodological and the educational programs for schools, technological tools, practical cases for schools, schools teachers and teachers of these new pedagogical academies or centers should be integrated in projects, especially research projects with experts and with joint interdisciplinary scientific labs. And of course, if we will create the new centers for teaching excellence, they can provide the strong integration with business and practice. I absolutely agree with previous speakers that say about new design of our academic programs, because we have a new skills. In this case, the number of different tracks in the new design of academic programs for teachers can include not only cultural code or special mandatory block like trilinguism or pedagogical or psychology or special professional competencies like mathematics, physics, but also worldview block, soft skills like leadership, effective communications, design thinking, acting skills, personal presentations. Also entrepreneurship skills, creativity, creating startups, management, marketing, digital skills, digital thinking, like programming, using big data, Internet of Things, development of a special online educational platforms, special mobile applications, and also the specialties with sport and art, yoga, meditation, arts, therapy, whole theater. But if you analyze the current academic programs for teachers, especially in our current pedagogical university, you will see only 2 or 3 tracks, like mandatory block or cultural code or worldview block, without the special soft skills, entrepreneurship, digital thinking skills. And I think that especially in the post-COVID period time, we as educators can create absolutely new strategy, new vision. And it will be new vision not only for whole educational system in our country, but every organization, every educational organization can create new strategy and new vision. Because in this new strategy and new vision, we will provide a new, absolutely new design of academic programs. We will create new institutions like centers for teaching excellence in every region, especially in rural areas of our country. We should analyze how we will combine the new technologies and how we will establish a blended education, combination of offline education and online education, and how we will educate the new type of teachers, and how we will establish the new ecosystem and infrastructure in education. Now, if you analyze the infrastructure of our educational organizations, maybe only few organizations now established the new infrastructure, new ecosystem, like open spaces, co-working centers, simulations rooms, art zone, creative spaces, individual spaces, relaxed spaces, sport zones. But creation, the new ecosystem and new infrastructure in our educational system also can change mindsets of our new teachers. Thank you very much. This is a short focusing on creating the new approach of training our teachers in secondary schools and in high-level education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Gulmira Manjolovna, for your very bright presentation, and we wish every success and prosperity to your academy, and we believe it will contribute to achieving sustainable development in our educational system of Kazakhstan. So now I'm very happy to give the floor to our next speaker, Mr. Rowan Kennedy, the British Council Country Director for Kazakhstan. Please, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, I hope you can hear me all right. Thanks Khalida, and thank you very much to the Kazakhstan PhD Association for the invitation to speak, and congratulations for organising such a fantastic event at this very tricky time. I haven't spoken to David about my presentation beforehand, but actually I'm going to touch on some very similar areas. So that's partly because enterprise education is one of the most important parts of the British Council's programme here in Kazakhstan. But by way of an introduction, this is the British Council's 26th year of building cultural relations here in Kazakhstan. Our primary aim as an organisation, wherever we work all around the world, is to support the development of trust and mutual understanding between the UK and the countries that we work in. And I say mutual understanding, that point about mutuality is hugely important for us. So everything we do here in Kazakhstan is designed to build trust, but is also designed to support Kazakhstan to achieve its own development aims, among which, of course, are the Sustainable Development Goals. Education has always been a strong focus of what the British Council does here in Kazakhstan as elsewhere in the world. We're very proud, for example, of the role that we played in supporting the establishment of the Bolshak program when it was first set up back in the mid-1990s. We have continued that focus on education ever since. We're also proud of the fact that we have been delivering online English teaching here in Kazakhstan, focusing particularly on supporting schools in Atyrau for several years now, so long before we were all forcibly moved online by COVID-19. The focus on education is not something that's going to change. It's always going to be a big part of our programming here. Through the work we do in education, as with all our work, we aim to build links between people and between institutions in the UK and in Kazakhstan. But also, as I said, we aim to support Kazakhstan to achieve its own goals. And here we're focusing particularly on the goal of developing a knowledge-based economy, of being able to move up the economic value chain from extracting and selling raw materials to higher value activities. Because, of course, all of this will be crucial to ensuring that Kazakhstan can achieve its goal of joining the world's 30 most developed economies by 2050. So our current strategy for Kazakhstan has two key planks when it comes to education. The first is around English, because we all know that English is vital, a solid knowledge of English is vital for a modern knowledge-intensive economy. And so the work that we do as the British Council is about sharing the best UK resources, sharing UK expertise to support teachers and support learners of English in Kazakhstan improve their abilities, and also allowing them to assess and monitor their progress in line with international standards through our suite of English testing, whether that's IELTS or APTIS or any of the other tests we offer. The second area, and this is where I think I have quite a lot in common with other speakers, is a focus on enterprise education. So it's very clear that to achieve the goal of economic diversification, Kazakhstan will need to support the development of small and medium enterprises in a very wide range of sectors right across the economy. And our activity as the British Council really focuses on two areas of enterprise where the UK has proven to be very, very successful in developing these, and where these sectors have proven to be important in driving the creation of jobs, in driving innovation and driving economic growth. So that's social enterprise and creative enterprise. And the reason we focus on those in Kazakhstan is not just because they're areas of strength for the UK, but it's because we believe that they can have a similarly transformative effect on communities and on the economy here in Kazakhstan as they've had in the UK. So our work here is really revolves around supporting young Kazakhstanis to develop their skills in both areas, in social enterprise and creative enterprise. And we do that both by delivering courses and training ourselves. So one example of that would be our ICEED project, which we've been running since 2013, which focuses on providing young people with education that will support their understanding of what enterprise is, particularly what social enterprise is, and giving them the skills they need to launch and develop their own social enterprises. So we deliver training ourselves, but we also support the development of enterprise skills through supporting the development of new partnerships between universities in Kazakhstan and the UK. And one very good example of this is our new Creative Spark programme, which is funding 10 partnerships between universities in the UK and universities in Kazakhstan, each of which looks at a different aspect of enterprise education with a particular focus on the creative industries, so creative enterprise. Now, I've chosen to focus on English and on an enterprise education. We do, as the British Council, work in a number of other areas. We promote STEM education. We support UK universities to attract the brightest young Kazakhstani students, for example, through our annual Study UK exhibitions. And some of the members of the Kazakhstan PhD Association may, I hope, have first met representatives of their university at one of our exhibitions. And we also do quite a lot of work in the arts. So we support artists from the UK and Kazakhstan to showcase their work to audiences in both countries. An important principle of what we do with the British Council is that almost everything we do is achieved through working with partners. So those partners might be direct participants in our programs, such as schools, universities, colleges, local and national governments, NGOs. But we also work with a number of organisations who support our work financially. So I mentioned the IC programme, that's been made possible through the support of Chevron. Our online English teaching, which we've been doing for the last few years in Atirau, is made possible through the support of NCOC, North Caspian Operating Company. And we also work with a number of other partners, including Chevroil and other embassies. We're always keen to expand our networks of collaborators, and we're always keen to explore new partnerships. And one of our main motivations for wanting to take part in this event is to make new connections, despite the current challenges that we're facing, meeting and communicating as we usually would. Across all of what we do in Kazakhstan and indeed elsewhere in the world, COVID-19 has meant that we've had to pause. It's meant that we've had to take a step back and reassess our plans, as I'm sure have all of you, whether that's personally or professionally. But I'm happy to say that as of today, the majority of our work, the majority of the work the British Council is doing here in Kazakhstan has successfully moved online. So whether that's English teaching, and we're working closely with the Centre for International Programmes because we provide English language training for Bolshak scholars before they go abroad to study. That's all moved online. Our social enterprise classes for students in Atirau have moved online. And indeed, some of our Creative Spark workshops have also now moved online. As an organisation whose role is about building bridges between countries and cultures, sometimes thousands of miles apart, we do see opportunity as well as challenge in the current situation. And I have to say that as well as working out how we respond to the everyday challenges of lockdown, we're also quite excited about some of the new possibilities that the very rapid and widespread adoption of new communications technologies and ways of working will bring. So I think just to finish, I'd say this: whatever the world looks like after COVID-19, it's very clear that education and our ability to learn from each other will continue to be enormously important. And we at the British Council believe that in education, as in other spheres of life, that more connection between countries and people, not less connection, is what will be needed to help us all rebuild our economies and rebuild our societies after COVID-19. And that's why, in short, we believe that the work that we're doing here and the work that indeed everyone on this call is doing, and that's why we believe that events like this are so very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Rowan. Indeed, we are all very grateful to British Council for the continuous support of our students, of our people, not only in Kazakhstan, but across Central Asia, in our pursuits of getting new knowledge, expanding our horizons, and developing new skills. And indeed, as you rightly noted, the value of education would never decrease. And in the current period of distance learning, of the quarantine and pandemic, the value of education, I believe, has even grown further. So thank you so much, dear Rowan, and thank you very much, British Council, for your support. And we'll be very happy to continue our cooperation in the future projects. And now I'm very pleased to give the floor to Ms. Elmira Obry. Elmira is the head of tech of the Bureau for Continuing Professional Development at Astana International Financial Center. Thank you very much, Elmira, for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and hi everyone, especially our dear participants and speakers. It's a great pleasure to participate in this online event, and I would like to say welcome to the future, because we supposed to receive it later on, but we're actually building it today by performing the events online, by preparing the online learning, and I guess it's a good issue. As a change manager as well, not only the head of the tech department of the continuing professional development of the DAC professional society, I like to ask challenging questions. And actually the main dilemma of nowadays, what we're facing now, thanks or unfortunately to the COVID-19, is digital disruption, or it's a disruptive innovation. This is a real question, and that's why I want to come up with quite large-scale topic. We call it active learning, and I want to share my screen. Yep, I hope you see it. Is everything fine? Yeah, so why active learning? Actually providing the services and the courses for professional and for continued professional development, we quite often facing this issue because we are more focusing on andragogy than on pedagogy. But in any case, this world will not be the same after this situation. Even the pandemic will pass away. So in this case, the active learning is just becoming a new methodology which might bring us the tools and learning us how to learn the others to learn. So that's why actually my main question and the inspiration to prepare this presentation was the online education of nowadays. Is it just a show of one microphone, or it's a real the new methodology? So let's move on. So, sorry. Okay. I want to start just with an example. We launched the new online academy for the IT specialists. We call it Quant. By this we mean all the quantic technologies and non-innovation we try to enroll and combine in this active learning way on a platform. Everything is just available on the cloud, and even more, we supporting them online, as we do, for example, now by providing the mentorship session, the peer assessment, peer review. Everything is going online. This is our first experiment, and actually it goes well. And today is the official launch of this project, but we already started like 1 month ago, and we are now receiving our first cohort of 100 people. Then it will be 417 brave people who decided to learn online and learn how to learn in different way. So our main actually values in this project was active learning, community building online, and career development. So just we are missioners about the future and for future, because we are all facing the new era of the fourth industrial revolution, and we need to reflect and bring something to be ready to settle something, just to face it the better way we can. So just briefly about our team and our advisory boards, which presented by the experts of the field in IT and education, the soft skills development, and so on. And actually our partners. This project is international, and we are making this international experiment together with UC Berkeley, with the Silicon Valley, Quasar, and European also team, which helping us to bring new knowledges to the world. And I will not stand on the program details. I just want to mention and more focus on the learning mechanic. Again, it's active learning. And there are some interesting just spots and ideas which came up with like big universities like Princeton University. And I want to share what we discovered during this project, that now the paradigm of education is extremely changing into the active way of receiving knowledges and actually digesting them as well, actively interacting with your peers, receiving the assessment from your peers, and even mentors and teachers becoming not just the hierarchy top level person, they're becoming the line manager who helping to create a community or just to help them how to learn in different way. So we're basing our methodology, and I guess it will be multiplied in different sector, from the IT, it could be in art, it could be in just English learning, as for kids, as for adults. So quite interesting researches will come up soon. So actually Harvard University, they discovered that even without understanding what active learning is, the results, the test at the end, is quite impressive. Like everyone just enjoying the classic way of education with a mentor or tutor in front of you, presenting some materials you have to learn, and you kind of feeling that you are participating. But at the end of the lesson, not all of knowledges you were listening is actually entering your the brain as well as you want. And you're forgetting it's like in 30 minutes after you're leaving your classroom. But active way of preparing the lessons, learning, and just receiving information is giving quite impressive results. So you can see that the 17% of what people remembering and saying and writing is better happening in an active way. At the same, what's actually what we are doing is creating us new habits, and those new habits is reflecting our brain how to learn. So again, coming back, and I will make a lot of I will compare the classic way of education, let's say the old style, and the new way of education, the new era of the methodology, how to provide the new knowledge to your students. Is before it was a kind of hierarchy, the pyramid, and now in active learning, everyone is on the same scale, and the role of tutor is just to be not a one-man show, but it's a role of the mentor, the role of the friend, and somehow also as a moderator, as Khalida, for example, doing for us, is just to help the better way to receive the knowledge you need. So what we're mentioning about the active learning, it's to be enough creative, evaluate your knowledges, analyze what you're doing during the process and after all, applying to some activities which helps you to understand what you're learning more deeply, understanding what you're doing by receiving the assessment, the feedbacks, and so on. And of course, remembering actively, proceeding some exercises, or just interacting with the group or with your mentor. So this what we mean by active learning. And we do believe that this is a new way how to provide education in the future, not only in IT, but in general. So active learning model is based on project orientation and project based learning. Also, it's very important to have a peer review from not only the tutor, but from your classmates and your peers, because we are learning sometimes by explaining to the other person how I achieved my personal, for example, score, or how I passed through my test, or what techniques, or memo techniques, or other techniques did I use. And of course, in this friendly communication and interaction, I can understand more by explaining. The same way I will receive some tips how to do my learning more comfortable or fast, to be the fast tracker, or just find my way how to learn more effectively personally, because we are all different, and just one path for everyone will actually never work, and this trend will become more and more actual for nowadays education, especially online. Of course, it's also role playing, because you can be a tutor at the same time as a student. You can be assessor or the person who just under assessment. You can just use the gamification, which is like becoming the new trend, not only for kids but also for adults. And research says it's very effective way, like not only in education but even the medicine, medical treatments now using a lot of the gamification techniques and tools. So project-based technology is just learning by doing, like really handling the projects with the maximum realistic environment, which the students might face in their real life. Because what we're facing now, a lot of students, they're just lost after finishing the university degree. They do have the theoretical knowledge, but they don't know how to use them just to develop their career or just to start their first project. That's why we think that's very important to give them this habits during their education. So research also and investigate, analyze and evaluate, and try to design the most creative ways how to learn. Gamification, as I mentioned before, is just you're playing, but at the same time, you are learning a lot. And mentoring, of course, online learning is not just a question, and it's not like, will we use it in the future? Of course we will. But at the same time, as Gulmira mentioned, we need to blend it somehow with some more personal communication during the learning process. That's why we installed in our program, in our experiment, the big part, which is mentorship, because every group has its own mentor, as formal as informal, which helps people feel more self-confident. They will have an access to, for example, to call a mentor or to ask the question they need during the conversation online, or just in the personal communication with the students. So it's somehow, it's empathy. It's very important in online education, because when you're just performing in front of your camera, you don't really feel the person behind the camera, and especially if it's not just one person, if it's the whole class of 25 people or even the 100 people behind the camera. So it's important for us, for human beings, just to create this empathy even via the online education. So it will not disappear. We need to work on our soft skills and emotional intelligence even more than we did it before in a class like offline. So this is the question and the main challenge, how to complete those kind of courses to make them efficient to learn our students. And the role playing, again, it's important because we need to give our students the real experience to feel the taste of the real world once they will come into the open markets and try themselves to catch a job, or just to bring their knowledge in the project they will do in the future. So this is, I guess, the all. And the last but not least, the community building online, it's quite important as well. As a Bureau for Continued Professional Development, we are working more than 3 years on how to develop the community. Before we did it offline, of course, by providing the courses on our campus. But world is changing, and we're ready for these changes, and we're actually mitigating them and accepting them well, even online. So thank you. If you will have any question, I'll be happy to answer them via the web chat or what we have.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, dear Elmira, for a very informative presentation. I would like to note that the Bureau for Continuous Professional Development at the Astana International Financial Center is our long-standing partner. And last year, with the assistance and quite generous support of the AIFC and BCPD, we held our second research forum at the premises of the AIFC, which was quite a success. Thank you very much, Elmira.
Thank you, Khalida, and good luck.
Thank you. So now, dear colleagues, dear partners, speakers, presenters, and listeners, I'm quite happy to pass the floor to the members of our association, to current researchers in education. And we would like to start with a presentation by Natalya Hanley. She is a PhD researcher in education at UCL, and her presentation is called The Empathy Pedagogical Approach Contribution to Global Citizenship Education, Kazakhstani Secondary Schools Context. Thank you, Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to actually present this project. It's actually really amazing because Meirgul and Gulmira already mentioned about the global citizenship education, and they talk about the needs for teachers trainings and so on. So I'll try to just not to, they basically talk about the global citizenship education, and I would probably start with my personal experience, because I'm not from the academic area. I came from the humanitarian aid area. I've been a part of the international organization for a long time, and as a part of the organization, we try to bring the global issues to education, to bring the voices of these people who are working in the field and trying to explain all these global issues from a different perspectives. And in 2017 at the World Economic Forum, we've heard a very interesting concept. The president of China, Xi Jinping, actually described the world. He explained the economic growth, and he acknowledged the advanced technology and science. At the same time, he actually talked about the global issues and the importance and how much we need to actually pay attention to that as well, because every country, everyone is actually taking by the global issues nowadays, and we see how globalization has its impact on us, and especially to the education. And education itself tries to focus more on preparing the young graduates to be more competitive and be more competitive in the global market, and have all these skills and competencies, and to kind of try to be fit to what today in the global market. But also we believe that we need to actually think about other cultures, and we need to be more sensitive, and we need to feel more of a global world and develop the sense of social justice, and we need to know more about global ethics and human rights and sustainable development. And one of the very important part of the global citizenship education is actually take a responsibility for what you receive, and this is very important, because the question is what next, what we're going to do with our skills, what we're going to do with our competencies, and how we are going to practically implement it. And this is really important because as a humanitarian aid organization, we've been doing all the time, right? And we always been working with the students, like university students, but we thought about the secondary school students because they graduated from the schools and they go to university, and basically they full of knowledge, they're full of skills, hard skills, but they don't know how to use them. And basically, as a humanitarian aid organization, we try to bring the concept of global issues to education by helping them to walk a mile in the shoes of other people. And this is what was presented at the World Economic Forum the last 10 years. And this is the picture from the simulation or workshop, which was presented a day in the life of a refugee, when the organization invited participants to come and walk a mile in the shoes of other people and cognitively and emotionally learn, and basically feel empathy and understand the issue deeply. It's not just a statistic, it's not just numbers, because all these global issues, it's not about numbers, it's all about people, it's all about lives. And we thought that empathy could be a really good tool or approach, pedagogical approach, when students can actually walk a mile in the shoes of other people and try to understand the global issues. And this project we launched in a number of the secondary schools, and we try to understand which of the global competences, global consciousness, or global behaviors these pedagogy would have a contribution to. And basically we found out a very interesting outcome. Of course, we were fascinating because teachers and the students came back and they said, wow, that was really interesting. They learned, they felt, they could actually discuss, they become really active, and we saw it first, it worked. Also, we found the role of the teachers were really, really important. And like Gulmira actually mentioned about the teachers who need more trainings. But from these perspectives, because they are teachers, they are not charity workers, they didn't really learn this area, they were even less qualified in this area, which I personally kind of understood them, because if I worked with the refugees, then it's quite difficult to explain it to the ordinary teacher who actually has a different perspective. They have probably more curriculum, exams, how we need to pass them, and that was a big challenge actually during this project, to explain and to make them understand. And one of the teachers actually said that the teachers should be first to experience empathy. They should understand it first, and then they can pass it on. We also found out that global citizenship education was in the curriculum, but it strongly emphasized the global competencies. Again, hard skills, how to be competitive, how to fit to the global market. And very few schools actually raise the interest in global consciousness dimension. It's all about social justice, it's all about feelings, and all about human rights. And that was really interesting, because I believe we need to learn today global ethics and values in order to step into the global market. And I found a very limited presence of global behavior. And yeah, I will talk about it later. And basically, out of this project, we found out some very interesting recommendation. The first one, promotion of global citizenship education in Kazakhstani secondary or high school education, is really, really important, because we students are not just those who are a set of skills. they are human beings, and they need to learn how to be human beings in the local society, in the global society. And this is something what Global Citizenship Education actually can bring to the curriculum. And the positive thing is that Global Citizenship Education doesn't require certain subjects. They can go through the subject, they can be implemented to geography, history, languages, and so on. And that could actually bring a huge positive input into education. There is a need, a strong emphasis on global consciousness, and we need to talk about it, and we need to do more about global behavior. And I do understand, as a charity worker, probably I want to do more. But I also want to encourage to do more. Why? Because last year, the conference in London, Angel Conference of the Young Researchers, I met a very young lady. Her name is Lottie Tallinn, and she was only 16, and she was a young speaker from Youth Strike for Climate. And you probably noticed all the climate change demonstration which were in the UK last year. And she actually talked very simple things, and she said, we did what we've been taught in the schools. And that really struck me, because I was thinking, wow, that's so simple. And she also brought two very simple concepts, and she said, it doesn't matter how small the things are and you want to do them, and the second one, it doesn't matter how young you are. And I was compare it with the result from this project, when the young students came to me and they said, nobody listened to us, nobody takes us seriously, nobody trusts us. And I was thinking, wow, these people have this potential to do something, and we need to create this area for students to actually start taking a responsibility and act. And this is something what a young generation actually can do, and I believe in them. And I believe that they can do it, because they're not only capable to actually learn, but also implement what they learn. And also, it is very important focus on the teachers, because teachers still have quite a powerful stable position in the schools. And before we move to what Elmira mentioned, to active learning, we need to actually also work with them really like too much. And also, one of the things which could help to promote the global citizenship education in Kazakhstani education is probably collaboration between educational institutions and international NGOs and the local NGOs which are registered in Kazakhstan. And I'm not talking only about UNESCO, UNICEF, because they are international, they're big, and but I also talk about a small organization which can actually bring their knowledge and their practices to the educational institution like schools, and share with the children what they can do in the future, and that actually bring the impact at the end. So yeah, and that's probably all, because I had only 8 minutes. I tried to be very short, and yeah, if you have any questions, that would be yeah, I'm happy to respond to them.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, dear Natalya. Indeed, we will have a place for discussion after all our presentations. So again, thank you very much for raising such an important issue as citizenship education. I see here intersection between various projects, including my project. We'll be happy to discuss it later. And now I would like to give the floor to Camilla Rowland, Miss Camilla Rowland. She is a PhD researcher in inclusive education at the University of Cambridge, and she is also the founder of the School for All Inclusive Education Center, and her presentation is called Education for All. Thank you, Camilla, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Khalida. Thank you, colleagues, for incredibly interesting sessions. At this point, you should be able to hear my voice well and see the presentation. If not, please do let me know. As I was just introduced, I am a PhD student at the University of Cambridge, and the area of my study is inclusive education development in the Central Asian region. Now, the reason why I started researching this area actually comes a long way, because when I was 18 years old, I was volunteering for Red Crescent organization back during my bachelor studies time. And you can see me here in the middle of the picture in the clown costume. So I really dedicate a lot of time volunteering in orphanages, hospitals, with children with special needs, disabilities, from vulnerable backgrounds. And apart from providing entertainment, I've been also engaged in providing academic support courses for children from vulnerable backgrounds, such as multi-children families and low-income families. And that direct contact with the kids made me decide to commit to the area, which is why I completed my master's degree in inclusive education back in Kazakhstan. And me and my colleague opened this Education for All nonprofit organization based in Nur-Sultan, Astana, the capital of Kazakhstan. We are providing academic, sports, and arts classes for children with and without disabilities in a common mainstream environment. So in one classroom, we have kids of different ability levels and children whose primary language might be different, either Russian or Kazakh. But the thing is that everyone studies together. We are trying to really tackle the long tradition of segregation and to show that it is possible, providing right conditions to create this environment that fosters inclusivity and welcoming diversity. We started from classes and then we moved on to developing inclusive theater program named KID, where we provide opportunities for children to improve their communicational and linguistic skills, largely through performing arts. And then we also launched transition program to equip young adults with special needs with independent living and employability skills. And last year, we've been able to support employment of 3 of our graduates. So this was something that I've been heavily involved in. And the idea of inclusive education becomes something that is not only my professional interest, but really close to my heart. And I'm really glad the whole idea of inclusiveness is now penetrating pretty much every educational environment in any context. If we look at SDG for quality and equity in education, this whole idea of equity and equal access comes pretty much in every target. Specifically, target 4.5 talks about ensuring equal access to all levels of education for all learners, including those with disabilities, indigenous people, and children in vulnerable situation. So this became an agenda for most countries, most educational systems in most developing countries. And the definition of inclusive education obviously can differ depending on the context, because at each country, the group that identified as a vulnerable group might be different. The broad definition provided by UNESCO says that inclusive education is to accommodate for every learner and to ensure that every learner has quality education, general education, and that no form of discrimination and no form of segregation should be existent in the educational area. Now, the narrow definition of inclusive education, for example, in our Central Asian region, mostly focuses on children with special educational needs and disabilities, because historically they've been marginalized, and the disparities in their educational attainment and their access to education are more prominent. So definitions are contextual. Like in the picture here, you can see the snapshot of the times back when African Americans were fighting school segregation. So inclusive education as an idea existed long time before the actual term appeared. But studying it now, and I'm just beginning my studies, it's my year 1, so it's too early to speak about any results. But what you can already see studying the literature, for example, is some common barriers to inclusive education development in the Central Asian region. Among these barriers, the largest topics are stigmatization, standardization, and scarce resources. Stigmatization, I would say, it's the biggest barrier to inclusion because there are so many false ideas and myths around disability in our region, possibly due to the history of segregation and also to some of the cultural peculiarities. UNICEF studies in 2018 revealed several interesting findings, and I just put one of them. 37% of respondents claim that disability is caused by God's punishment, spell, curse, or use of phone or computer. And that type of belief, and the respondents are general people, it's a general population. And that type of belief, you can really see how that can limit an opportunity for a child to be included, because the fault is placed on individual and family rather than on the system. And speaking of the system, we here speak about the history of standardization, where our curriculum is to address the needs of most children, and leaving those children who are not could not be defined as neurotypical. Like, this is a very simple graph of standard deviation. The average is this dark blue graph, but there are always standard deviation, those who are not average, because either, for example, these are gifted children, children whose performance is much faster and much more efficient than for other kids who learn faster. And there are other children, for example, with intellectual disabilities or with multiple disabilities, for whom it's much, much harder to learn. And this culture of standardized curriculum really poses danger to the idea of inclusion, as well as scarce resources, because we can see how teachers have not been exposed to this idea historically during Soviet times. And now when they're asked to accommodate for the needs of a child with special needs, for example, by modifying curriculum and using assistive technologies, the teacher is not equipped with methodological resources. We also speak about human resources, such as some additional staff members, such as in the States, it can be paraprofessionals. We're now just starting to introduce tutors in Kazakhstan, and the availability of such professionals is very limited. And we're also speaking about scarce resources in terms of just provision of books, such as, for example, books written in Braille. And some of these common barriers can be tackled with some common approaches. I'm not sure if you can see the next slide. Okay. Number one approach is obviously provision of adequate resources to teachers and students in the classroom. This is an example of teacher resource room, and I know that now the World Bank and the Ministry of Education are launching a program, and as part of this program, one of the components is to analyze the needs of resource rooms and to equip each region of Kazakhstan with such resource room where teachers could receive additional support, and also children could receive additional support if they struggle. The second common approach is individualizing education, and there are multiple ways to do it. For example, case management technique, but what I included here is individual educational plan. So I decided to provide an example of something very tangible, something a teacher can use in the classroom. And this individual educational plan is to tailor for individualized learning needs and assessment needs. So how do we assess a child with, for example, a disability in the mainstream classroom? You can make the modifications to assessment strategies in the individualized educational plan, which is developed collaboratively by teachers, oftentimes student and a parent, and some more narrow professionals such as special education teachers, or as we call them in Kazakhstan, still defectologists. And by developing this individual educational plan, which sets the targets for each child and the ways how we measure the progress, we would be able to make learning more individualized experience and not measuring every child with a single measuring scale. And lastly, and very importantly, is creating inclusive culture, the culture which welcomes diversity. And previous speakers spoke about, global ethics and values and developing of empathy, and pretty much development of inclusive culture where all kids are taught how to peer support one another. This is the culture that can allow to create this empathetic, caring environment and make children more skilled for democratic citizenship. So it's not only about personal stories of each child, but it's also economic and political issue because inclusion actually does contribute to increased GDP, and it can contribute to democratic citizenship, which is at the heart and the core of our constitution and the constitutions of Central Asian countries in general. So development of inclusive education in Central Asia is something that I'm fascinated about, and I really would love to keep researching that and keep sharing findings that I find along the way. And for now, I've been really glad to share some of the highlights of my project. Like this last pictures that you've seen are the pictures taken at our educational center where we pilot these ideas. So thank you very much for attention. It's very hard to squeeze everything in 8 minutes, but if you ever want to reach back, you can. I'm here. You have my contact information next to my name.
Thank you very much, dear Camila. Again, thank you very much for running such an important social and educational project. And I would like to mention again that achieving inclusive education is one of the main aims of the Sustainable Development Goal number 4. So thank you very much again. And now I would like to pass the floor to Ms. Natalya Radko, who is the PhD candidate at Hanley Business School of the University of Reading. And her presentation is called Entrepreneurial Ecosystem of University, How and Why Academia is Changing its Business Model. Thank you, Natalya, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Khalida, for introducing me, and thank you everyone for being here today and for spending your time for listening us. So I'm very happy to share my thoughts based on my experience that I have in Kazakhstan and based on the projects that I'm running in Kazakhstan. So as Rowan was mentioning before, it's a Creative Spark project. And so based on this engagement, based on my work before in Kazakhstan, I would be very happy to share my ideas. And as Camila was saying, so it's really short time, 8 minutes, and so I was also trying to squeeze my presentation and be straight to the point as I can. And so I will try to share my presentation first. So first of all, I would like to say that I'm a PhD student at Hanley Business School, University of Reading. To be honest, apologize at my presentation in Russian because I thought a lot, what should I do it in Russian or English, but then I thought about the audience, maybe Russian would be better if we talk about the broader audience who would listen us, but I will talk in English, of course. So I'm doing my research at Hanley on on university entrepreneurial ecosystem, and so my the object, or I base my research on UK university ecosystem, but I'm much more than happy to apply the knowledge what I have, what I see here, and how we can apply some ideas based on Kazakhstani system. So my project is related to the SDG number 4. So it's about increasing the number of people who will possess the necessary skills and knowledge in technical and professional education, and would have enough skills to get a nice job and to do entrepreneurship. So if I would start from the beginning, or why I started to talk about university business model. So if we will talk how university was developed and where Kazakhstani educational ecosystem is now. So first of all, there are 3 main stages how university business models is developing. At the beginning, industry and academia, they were separately, with government having a leading role and providing legislation and the main administrative support, how these institutes should be collaborating together. So later, the other stage, or the next stage, is transitional business model, or many of us know it's a triple helix model, and many universities are now trying to develop this collaboration between university, industry, and academia. And so if we will talk later, or if we will talk about how we should develop universities in order for them to respond more adaptable and to provide more input into the development of the region and of the ecosystem. It's more about the mutual collaboration. It's about the mutual collaboration when in the intersection of the action of government, industry, and academia, there are a new set of stakeholders arising who actually help to facilitate the spillover of knowledge and help to increase the contribution of the university into the development of the region. So if we'll talk about the sustainable development of a country for the long time, so of course, basically, the evolving university business model or entrepreneurial business model would work better. But if we'll talk about the Kazakhstani ecosystem or a Kazakhstani university ecosystem, it's more related on transitional business model. I would say yes, some universities is trying to develop a transitional business model, develop the collaboration between academia, industry, and the government. But mostly, if we will talk about the broader population, it's mostly based on traditional university business model, where universities are more teaching and only teaching and research. So if we talk about the problem which should be solved, first of all, that it's a huge need to develop an information society, especially now with the challenge of COVID, and to be honest, I also would say, because now I see what is going on with, we all see what is happening with online education in Kazakhstan. Yes, the access to online education is very good in big cities, but if we talk about the remote areas and about some regions which is a bit far from the city, the access to online education is not so good because of the access to the internet. The increasing role of university in innovation development of the region, and the ability of university to be adaptable to the constantly changing environment. They manage the way university work, and this is why university should change their business model. And it's actually not new. And so the main point here, I would say, the ability of university to work with relevant stakeholders, and how the university able to meet the demands of other stakeholders in the same way, to continue develop society, provide good and quality education. I was thinking about the project if we are trying to improve somehow the quality of educational system in Kazakhstan. So my idea was that what we can do, we need to develop the maximum adaptable model of how university is functioning in Kazakhstan, and it basically comes from the university strategy. And the university strategy should focus on three missions at the same time, which is education, research, and entrepreneurship. I have explored university strategies in Kazakhstan, and I would say that they mostly based on achieving results in educational area as well as research, and but entrepreneurial function is more or less developed or undercovered. So these three functions should be covered at the same time. What I thought, again, based on the experience that I have, and we are also having a project now with British Council and with Kazakh British Technical University on developing entrepreneurial skills. And I would say that still we see that university is not really well work developed with industry, and it's not so easy to develop this collaboration. But where we can start, so we should start from evaluating the needs of the industry in those specialists who are in specialists who is needed. Then we need to evaluate the programs and the modules which universities are running. And the main point is evaluate the skills which this program is provided. And so we need to compare the university. We need to compare the skills that university students are getting with the skills which is required to the industry. And I would say that yes, Kazakhstani universities are probably doing it, but if we I was a part of the members who was also working on developing a university strategy in Kazakhstan. And what was the point that that needs were taken from the government program, and it was a government project based on assessing the needs for industry, and the coverage was more or less broad, and it wasn't. It should be narrowed if we were talking about different universities, because different universities have different approaches, and they located in different regions, and the industry needs should be evaluated in the same region where university is located. And based on this, we should or universities should prepare specialists for the industry. If we will talk about the research industry or research mission, again, so my main point is that Kazakhstani university should start from evaluating, first of all, the human capital who is doing the research at universities. Again, based on my experience, we developed a strategy for research activities, but it wasn't. The strategy was good, but the main point is who is implementing the strategy, because university have a lot of faculty, and they are the main human capital who is implementing or who is helping to achieve the results which is proposed in the strategy. And I would say that the human capital in terms of research capital should be developed. The first main point is research ethics, and Natalya Hanley, she has already talked about this before in our previous talk, that and also Khalida, you have mentioned that we need to develop ethic codex, and this is a main point, because Kazakhstani university, yes, they are preparing, or they're preparing PhD students, but again, I was the part of Kazakhstani universities, and I was trying to be a part of Kazakhstani PhD programs. And to be honest, the science ethics should be developed, and this is a main point, because this is a time when PhD students are developing their skills. So I will skip, or I will try to talk very quickly about the quality. The main point is how university measures the quality of education or the quality of research. What for them is the quality? Is it about publication, what many universities are targeting now, or it's about implementing and commercializing the research, the result of this research, that all the results are able to be implemented into the industry and they can be sold. So which resources do we have? So this is a main about the funding And the next point is infrastructure for technology and the knowledge transfer. So that is why if I will go back and talk about entrepreneurial university at from the perspective of 3 missions. So I would say that teaching and the research, they both are complementing into the entrepreneurship. And from the teaching perspective, universities are responsible for developing the skills of students and for knowledge dissemination. From the research perspective, the main point is developing the knowledge. And so if we will switch to the entrepreneurial function, from the teaching mission, we could say that consultancy and the creation of startups, which is might be based on the programs and the modules that university is providing. This is a point when we can switch, or how teaching activity helps to develop entrepreneurship function. If we'll talk about research activities, so the main point of research activity is developing a new knowledge, and it's about innovation. And it's about innovation and selling the intellectual property right. Though this is a contribution of university into the innovation development of the region. So we are selling, or universities are selling the intellectual property rights, so they're implementing some innovation, or based on the research, some companies, like spin-off companies, might be developed. And again, the consultancy is the main point, which comes from the research activity. But if we talk about the Kazakhstani university ecosystem, my main point, if I will look from the perspective of university strategy. So based on what universities are oriented. So the research activity mostly oriented on publications to achieve the results in publication activity. Yes, it's good, but how we can go further, and how we can implement the new knowledge, not only by publishing, but also by selling this innovation which was developed at the university. And of course, it's a final mission of universities' contribution to the society, and we all know that it's about dissemination of knowledge and changing the mindset. And how we can do it, again, through developing the programs and the modules, which can help to develop different skills. And the main point that programs, Kazakhstani university programs, should be evaluated in terms of the skills that they are providing. And so I don't know, I was trying to provide some initial information. For example, if I will do, or if I will think about starting this project, what I can do. At least I can start with researching 2 or 3 universities and compare what they are doing in terms of developing, in terms of the skills, first of all, which they provide, in terms of the skill that they provide to students, and which programs do they have. And here are some potential partners who might be, with whom I can work based on my project, and based probably on my ideas. And if I would talk about the results, what this project might achieve, that it might be the strategy that will be working strategy, and the working strategy for at least 2 or 3 universities. If we'll talk from the perspective of sustainable goal, so how we can increase or enlarge the contribution of university into the development of the region. And so, as I said before, we need to start from the first, that it's evaluation of the needs of industry, and then based on these needs, implementing and developing the programs. And the university should give more academic freedom in terms of implementing these programs and implementing the programs and the modules with the teaching for students. So that's all from me. Thank you for your attention, and so I would be happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Natalya, and thank you very much for raising such an important issue as the contribution of universities and academia and researchers to achieving sustainable development. Indeed, quite often, not that many people perhaps may think that universities and academia are the partners for sustainable development, but actually they are. And I believe that through your research, we will be able to engage more universities, academia, and teachers and researchers, and to be more active in achieving sustainable development in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. So thank you very much, dear Natalya. And now we move on, and the next presentation will be made by Ms. Zhanat Tutesheva. She's a PhD candidate in education at the University of Bristol. And her presentation is called Inclusive Education in Kazakhstan, Parental Engagement in the Learning of Their Child with Special Educational Needs and Disabilities. Thank you very much, Zhanat, for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you very much, Khalida. Hello, everybody. My name is Zhanat, as Khalida has introduced. I'm a PhD student at University of Bristol, and I'm studying the topic of parental engagement in child's learning in the context of inclusive education and development in Kazakhstan. Based on my research findings and my own experience as a mother of 2 children, studying at both primary and secondary schools in the UK, I would like to propose a project of homeschool network that is aimed at enhancing collaboration between home and school and activating parental engagement. How can I move to the next slide? Yeah. Briefly talking about my interest in parental engagement, I have been looking at what parents do to support their children. What are the difficulties for them? What are the wider contexts that influence parental engagement? How they communicate child's needs and their own needs with professionals, and how can we benefit from parental engagement? So research suggests that parental engagement can help narrowing the achievement gap, and it can be an effective strategy in achieving effective learning outcomes as part of the UN Sustainable Development Goal. And considering that Kazakhstan is introducing inclusive education strategies, policies, it's important to consider parental engagement as a national strategy. So how to benefit, how can everybody involved in parental engagement can benefit from this process? First of all, it's about understanding and conceptualization that parental engagement is with child's learning. It's not only about child's schooling, doing homework together. It's not only about the school, coming to school, attending parent-teacher meeting, but mostly it is about child's learning that happens mostly and first of all at home environment. And for educators, education practitioners to understand how child is spending their time at home, what is parental background, what difficulties they have, what parent can contribute to the school, what knowledge they have is important if we want to achieve collaboration and to meet greater goals that we have talked about previously. As parents communicate, develop their relationship, unfortunately, there are barriers for them. In my study, parents, you can see the excerpts from the interviews. They talked a lot about the barriers accessing education. They talked about power relations with professionals. They talked about their voices that are not heard that they want to contribute, and most of the activities at schools are parents endorsed. They are not invited. So there are many other issues like related to culture, family culture. My participants are mothers. They talked about how it is difficult to be a primary caregiver. They have to balance work, life, and they have limited support in terms of psychological support. They have limited understanding from their husbands, from their extended family members, and they often feel themselves marginalized. They feel the stigma because of the culture that is present in our society, that children with special needs and disabilities, they are different. So my participants were mothers of children with special educational needs and disabilities. And in order to achieve collaboration, in order to address the issues of inclusive education that Camila talked previously and I'm addressing here, it's important that we address holistic and personalized approach that can be based on these 4 areas. First of all, involvement. The project that can help schools. The project that I'm proposing is for schools, for them to implement a strategy. So these 4 areas I'm talking about, first of all, involvement, that schools can expand their involvement activities. Because in my studies, mothers, parents, they talk about that their involvement is limited to parent-teacher meeting, and the quality of this parent-teacher meeting is not about child's learning. It's mostly about how to improve school facilities or something else. And involvement activities can be extended to many other things, like schools can create spaces for parents, for them to promote what is the school culture, to promote activities that is related to decision making. So, and the second aspect is family learning. So at the same time as involving parents, their expertise, their knowledge, educators can share their own experience. They can teach, they can support families with special programs. They can deliver training programs for families and parents. They can also expand access to through IT services to the materials based on evidence. The third aspect is policy and guidance. It's the important aspect, as my findings also suggest that parental engagement is conceptualized as not a process, it's an end product, and the partnership discourse that is introduced in policy documents is not in practice. So it's important that if school introduces parental engagement guidelines, if it introduces parental engagement initiatives, it's important that parents are represented in policy and guidelines. And also the important aspect is about capacity building. This relates to both parents and schools, because capacity building for parents would be helping them to access other specialist services, because most parents, they might have limited knowledge about how to access, for example, the other, like not only schools but other social services in terms of assessment of child's needs or other services. So this is about integrating the help that is aimed at helping, like supporting parents with their knowledge building and skills. So, and also for schools, capacity building is important, as my findings also suggest that there are opportunities for parents to engage. There are good, positive experiences, but they are not integrated in a school culture when there is a specific, for example, I would say in terms of an example of Bolashak charity program, parents talk about that there were good examples when the project is launched, and when the project is finished, unfortunately, schools couldn't continue with the same approach. So the capacity building for schools is also important. So these are the four areas that I think is important in introducing the parental engagement initiative at school. And it's a rough action plan that I have also already talked about, that relates to the four aspects. And resources, and in terms of resources and partners, it can be any interested inclusive school across Kazakhstan. The partners would be local education authorities, businesses, NGOs, and of course, it's important to implement the best international practice. And potential partners, it's important to have support from central government, research centers, and also universities. And the impact of this initiative would address the issues I have talked through above. It would help to improve the children's achievement. It will help to achieve better collaboration. Parents could participate more and in decision making and policy making in schools. They can develop their own efficacy, their own confidence in how to support their children. They can also have better understanding how to navigate specialist services. And also this project would be
Colleagues, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, dear Janat. Have you finished? I'm sorry, I wasn't able yet to follow the end of the presentation. Janat? Dear Janat, do you hear us? Just a second, dear colleagues, dear attendees and listeners, we will be back to you soon in just maybe 1 minute. We're experiencing a little bit of technical problems. Wonderful. Okay, we are back. Thank you very much for being with us. Anything can happen, unfortunately, but we are happy that we can still continue our session. And I would like to note that indeed Janat's research is very important. And what I would like to emphasize is that children, school children, and equally their parents are all important actors for achieving sustainable development. And I'm very happy that Janat, through her research, she indicates that parents can improve the engagement of their children in education. The parents can help their children to achieve more success in their education, especially and even when we talk about children with special educational needs. So thank you very much, dear colleagues, for being with us. And we have two more speakers before we start our discussion. The last two sessions, the last two presentations will be short, but quite informative as well. And I'm happy to give the floor to Ayburshin Bulatova. Ayburshin Bulatova is a teacher at Nazarbayev Intellectual School, and her presentation is called Formation of Ecological Culture of Students as a Basis for Education for Sustainable Development. Thank you very much, Ayburshin Bulatova, for participating in our forum, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Khalida. Good afternoon, participants. Dear participant, I would like to represent you my project, Formation of the Ecological Culture in Students as a Basis for Education for Sustainable Development. Actually, it's not only my project. I have some co-authors, Doctor in Pedagogy Sheikh Islamova Kazna, and Doctor in PhD in Pedagogy Sızdykova Galia. So in 2016, we, with the support of Jandanu Alema Fund, and with the financial support of the OCSE in office in Nur-Sultan, we have created the course, elective course for 6th and 7th grade students, Ecological Culture. What is the main differences of our course from another courses of ecology or ecology or sustainable development as well? This course it's directly related to our culture, the culture of Kazakh peoples, culture of all of the nations which live in Kazakhstan area. And this course related to the 5 elements of the ecological culture. It's ecological knowledge and skills. Ecological knowledge and skills the students can obtain from different proverbs, from some legends of nomad people, for example, and etc. Ecological consciousness and thinking, they developed by integration with the literature subjects. Actually, we did some action research at our school. I'm working at International Baccalaureate School, and we did some research, and we choose some 2 writers, and their novels we researched according to the ecological culture. So our teachers, literature teachers, create new approach to analysis of literature. This approach is integrated with ecological culture, and through this new technique of analysis, they tried and did some research to change anthropocentrical way of thinking of students to ecocentrical. It was quite big research during the 2 years they did it, and we can see some results that students reflect in a ecocentrical way. So ecological responsibility, duty, and value orientation, all of these elements integrated through science subjects, physics, chemistry, biology, geography, and integrated with the humanity, integrated with the literature subjects. So course content is structured according to the following principles. It's education on the environment, where students can research some literature sources, for example, to think about think about ecocentric, and change their mind from anthropocentric to ecocentric. Education in the environment where they can do some practice investigation, for example, go somewhere and analyze, for example, water samples, etc. Education for the environment, and they reflect what they can do for the environment. Yeah, in order to some actions. We did, in this case, we did some research, some competitions, yeah, student projects, social projects, personal projects, and also scientific projects. One of the scientific projects related to the obtaining some energy from purifying water. So our project objectives was to form ecological culture, develop environmental research skills among the younger generation, and preservation of cultural identity and implementation of the intercultural integrations through stories, through novels, etc. And integration of the ecological culture elements with science subject, as I said before, and formation of the global environmental thinking. Global environmental thinking, we did it through literature, yeah, Kazakh and Russian literature, and we will start to do in English as well. So project implementation plan was to make presentation of the textbook. Textbook is done in general education schools to introduce the integrative course environmental culture as an optional subject in primary school. So this one is an optional subject, elective courses not in only primary, just secondary school, yeah, not upper, but secondary school. So as Gulmira, yeah, as Gulmira said, that we need to management in pedagogy. Therefore, in order to lack of the management in pedagogy, we didn't maybe in lack of the management, we didn't introduce our project for whole school community. Yeah? And our book, for example, environmental culture, was successfully integrated in a school program in NIS schools, among several NIS schools, and we need to prepare. Sorry. Видно теперь? Okay, yes. So, sorry for some mistakes. To create an opportunity for joint participation of school students in project activities of social nature, for example, volunteer activities which we did in our school, for example, to implement the elements of the environmental culture or ecological culture and contribute to the development of the environmental culture of the population. So, and also, as I said before, to conduct some competitions, contests of scientific, personal, and social projects, and forming students' ecological culture. So implementation plan, so to develop global thinking, global or ecological thinking, yeah, to integrate of the ecological culture elements and literature. So application of the ecological culture elements in the analysis of an artistic work to develop ecocentric consciousness. So we take some Rowan Kennedy novels. It's called The Day After Collapse, and also novels of in Kazakh about Aral Sea problems, and we take some two global problems about Semey and Aral in order to investigate how we can change thinking of our students to global thinking. So, and also in our project, we use documentary series of Earth heritage releases by Khabar agency, and there are several films about the ecological problems. So resources and partners. So coverage area, it was Nur Sultan. I think it should be first Akmola region, Almaty region, Pavlodar region, and East Kazakhstan and Kızıldağ region, according to their some allocation of our research position. So partner in relations, the OCSE program office, Jandanu Alema Foundation, and Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools. And I think we need some partners in, for example, Bilim Media Group, yeah, in order to do it online as well, yeah. And I can see there are some ustas, yeah, for form, etc. And regional government, central governments, etc. So I hope that our project will do some, according to our project, we will change our minds of our young students in order to achieve global thinking way of our students. Thank you for your attention. And expected results of our project with the implementation of the training course and the guidelines teacher. We will learn to teach students how to research environmental process, yeah, to develop skills of integrating academic subjects with elements of the environmental culture. And in our works, we integrated it, for example, in some practical works. 50% of our books conducted practical researches, for example, to see how wind turbines work, how to decrease pollution of Caspian Sea, for example, and to use a new method of literature analysis in integration with elements of ecological culture. And we will also introduce the new elements of the analysis of literature in future. So thank you for your attention. If you have some question, and sorry for my poor English.
Thank you very much, dear Aybarshin. Thank you indeed for this fantastic research. I see here the intersection between several sustainable development goals, because sustainable ecosystems is a goal number 15, sustainable biodiversity and ecology. And indeed, it's really fantastic to see how through literature you teach school children about ecological problems and how to find solutions to them. So again, many thanks for your efforts to you and to your co-authors into this research. Thank you. So dear colleagues, now we move to our last presentation. I will ask Aybarshin to close your screen, please. And we will now move to the final presentation. Sorry. And please also turn off your microphone. Thank you. The project I'm going to present now, it's called Street Law Project, and I'm going to share with you about the results of this project. And indeed, I'm quite excited to talk about this project because it was launched 2 years ago. And the first time the idea of the project was presented was at the first Central Asian Research Forum for Sustainable Development and Innovation. So just a second, I'll move to my presentation. Okay, do you see my screen? Okay, great, thank you so much. So basically today, in the next 5 minutes, I would like to summarize the project results, the results of the Street Law project that was launched 2 years ago. And indeed, the reason why I launched this project was my response to increased levels of violence against children in Kazakhstan and in Central Asia. The Street Law project concept is not new. It was it originated back in 1972 and was devised. The project was devised by the students and law faculty of Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Again, at that time, it was also a response to increased violence among children at schools that were located in the impoverished districts of Washington, D.C. In 1998 and 2005, the project was successfully run in Kazakhstan and other Central Asian states as a subject course. However, following the decrease in funding, the projects were closed across Central Asia. But in 2018, as I mentioned, I started this project as a research project and education project, and this project aims to achieve several sustainable development goals, in particular Sustainable Development Goal number 4, the main topic of our session, but also SDG 16.2, which talks about elimination of all forms of violence against children, including psychological, physical, and sexual violence, and of course SDG 17, which is the goal of Partnership for Sustainable Development. The main ideas, the main goals of the project are to transfer knowledge, skills, and values to children who attend the course, and the main knowledge is about the rights and obligations and mechanisms to protect the rights of children. But also through this course, children learn about important skills, such as critical thinking, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, problem solving, teamwork, effective communication, presentation skills. And most important, the children learn about values, and they develop important attitudes to universal human values such as ethics, decency, honesty, justice, empathy, equality, and so on. And the main social goal of the project is to protect children from bullying and violence, prevent suicide, create a safe, inclusive, and respectful school environment. So already here you can see the intersection between my project and the projects of other speakers related to inclusive education. So a little bit about the results, what was achieved so far in the last 2 years. And I would like to say that I'm quite proud and excited to share with you the results, because when I was starting the project, again, I was alone and I didn't have any collaborators, no partners, but gradually over 2 years, I managed to create a network of collaborators and good friends. And now we have developed several projects based on strict law. So the first year was quite intensive, and I had to organize a lot of networking events, either myself or participate in other events. And here on this picture, in this picture, you see our current Minister for Education and all other people, colleagues of the civil society, of NGOs who actually run a lot of wonderful projects in inclusive education and protection of children from violence. So here I was also invited to the group, and that was the first time when I presented about my project, strict law, to the minister and other NGOs in the city of Almaty. Then in August and September, me and my fellow lawyers, my friends whom I knew from my university times, we started going from one university to another with our sessions and presentations. We were talking about the strict law project, and the aim was to recruit and engage students. So we're making these presentations to the law students of the first and second and third years. And the universities we approached were KIMEP, Almaty Management University, Eurasian Technological University, Narhoz, and the Kazakhstani University. And we were quite happy that following our recruitment event, we had around 30 students who successfully passed interviews and participated in our workshop. So we ran a 2-day workshop for students, and the main idea of this workshop was to teach students to the interactive methods of teaching law. And I would like to note that students themselves were quite excited to participate, and following the course, many of them were telling me that we wish that all our classes at the university were run as interestingly as here. So they all appreciated these techniques, and indeed the interactive methods, they engage students, and students manage to retain much more knowledge, and interactive methods of teaching make lessons more exciting and interesting, and the students see the value in these classes. So you can see again some of the interactive activities the students were doing. And here is our first cohort of 25 students who got their certificates. And then what happened is that for 6 months, over 6 months, we gathered together every week at the Eurasian University, and we organized our lessons. So every week, a pair of students, they prepared their own classes using the technique and methods of interactive teaching. And we covered 16 topics over the next 6 months, which included such important issues as gender equality, right to life, freedom of speech, protection of children from violence, and many others. And we were quite happy that indeed over time we could see the growth of our students, both professional and personal growth. And from at every time they were teaching at schools, they were becoming more and more confident, and the students themselves enjoyed teaching a lot. And I would like to mention that this was our first pilot project, which we ran at 5 schools of Almaty, equally in Kazakh and Russian classes, and the results were indeed fascinating. And we were happy to know that maybe that's at the beginning, for example, the school children, they didn't really see the value of human rights, didn't really understand why they needed to learn about human rights, how to protect their rights. They didn't understand why they had to respect the rights of other people. But gradually, after 6 months of teaching, the school children indeed demonstrated very good knowledge and understanding and adherence to the values of human rights. And I believe that's one of the best outcomes of our project. And what I was also happy about is that we have quite a few students who wanted to take their own initiative, and they organized their own projects of teaching street law at boarding schools. And for example, one of our students, a KIMEP student, Miss Nigina Kholova, who is originally from Tajikistan, she won a scholarship from the American councils, and she decided to organize a street law project. And what I was very proud of is that Nigina, while being a young professional, still a student, she already demonstrated quite effective communication skills. So she organized everything and negotiated the delivery of the course with the administration of the boarding school. So she negotiated with the sponsors and everything, and we had a quite successful event. And I would like to mention that the importance of this class was that we were teaching at the boarding school for blind children and with poor eyesight. And before preparing their class, our students, Nigina and other colleagues of hers from our project, they participated in a special workshop to learn how to teach to children who had problems with eyesight and blind children. And I believe it's really fantastic. So you could see that through the course, that the course itself, it raises the issues of empathy and develops empathy in not only in children but also in students who teach the course. So here are a few pictures from the course, and again the course at the boarding school ran for 2 days, quite an intensive one, but the children themselves were so happy that we came to visit them, and they were all asking us to come again. So the pilot stage of teaching ended in March, just before all our schools will move to distance learning. And I would like to say that at this period of distance learning, we found and discovered even more opportunities for developing our course even further. And one of our partners, the First President's Foundation, approached me and asked if I could deliver a street law course to children who live in orphanages and boarding schools across Kazakhstan. So I agreed, and I managed to transfer my street law class, which I usually deliver in a classroom. I managed to deliver it as an online course, as an online class. And I was indeed very excited about this event because, for example, when I teach in a classroom, I can deliver my class only to 30 students maximum. But thanks to distance learning technologies, online learning technologies, I managed to deliver my class to over 187 students who were simultaneously watching the class and also participating in teamwork. And they were located at 9 orphanages and boarding schools in 7 regions of Kazakhstan: north, south, center, in the Almaty Oblast, and I believe that's really exciting. So again, for me, the main challenge was to transfer the interactive parts of the course. So thanks to the help of the teachers who were already at the orphanages, they helped me to set the children in groups, to arrange them in groups, and again, they participated a lot in the teamwork, and they also organized an interactive quest game for them to participate, answer questions, and find a winner. And indeed, the class ran for 1 hour and 30 minutes. At the beginning, I thought that maybe children would be tired, but actually not. They were all very eager to talk and speak, and the topic was really quite actual. The topic was very important for them. We talked about how to prevent bullying and cyberbullying. And I was very pleased to see that children already have knowledge about the topic. So what's next? I'm happy also to share that thanks to covering the results of our project, gradually we started having more and more partners. And in January 2020, we organized a workshop, a round table on prevention of cyberbullying. It was organized at the United Nations headquarters in Almaty. So Vladimir Samik, the head of the UNCPI, he kindly and cordially helped us to organize the event at the premises of the United Nations, and we were supported by the First President's Foundation. And indeed, the roundtable was quite a success because we managed to bring together the directors and psychologists from over 70 schools of Almaty. The project was the roundtable was also supported by the Almaty City Education Department. And so what we agreed about is that now we are at the stage of developing anti-bullying and anti-cyberbullying policies for Almaty schools. So these are the policies that can teach children, their parents and teachers how to prevent bullying and cyberbullying and how to react to the instances of bullying and cyberbullying. And I personally developed 3 instruments which are based on my research of the relevant areas in the UK, in the United Kingdom, and in Russia. While I was a PhD researcher in the UK, I had a chance to teach at the local primary school in my city of Leicester, so that was indeed an unforgettable experience and quite useful. So what we do is that now we have invited all schools in Almaty, parents and students and NGOs to make their comments and suggestions to these policies and instruments. And here I show you the link which you can access. Anyone can access and find these documents, these instruments, and also some valuable presentations on prevention of cyberbullying, which were demonstrated by the speakers at the roundtable held in January. And we would appreciate your comments. So the idea is that we want to develop these model instruments to protect children from bullying and cyberbullying, and we hope that all schools would implement these policies in their programs. And then, of course, our next plans are to adapt all our street law lessons in the online format and continue organizing online lessons for different schools across Kazakhstan, and also training for teachers and university students who want to teach human rights at schools. A little bit of our partners, again, as I said, 2 years ago I was alone, and then Natalya Hanley, the founder of the Kazakhstan PhD Association, she supported me and she actually encouraged me to talk about this project and present it at the first forum. And ever since then, my network of partners has been growing and growing, and I'm happy to say that here you can see quite a number of universities. Already, for example, if you study with 5 schools, now we have over 70 schools, our partners in Almaty and other cities. So the geography of our partners is also working. The students, some of the students whom we have in our project are from Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and they're quite willing to move and pass the knowledge of how to teach this course to their fellow citizens in their countries. And of course, we are growing. And I'm very happy and pleased that I can be here and present this project to you, dear colleagues and partners and friends. Here you can see my details. And again, welcome to Strict Law. We're very happy to continue our partnership with everyone who is interested how to make our society safer for kids, safer for all of us. So thank you very much. This is the end of our presentation and all presentations for today. And I'm happy to open the floor for discussion and questions from our from the participants of the session. So we had quite a few questions, and to some of you, I have already sent them. And let me see. So I would like to ask the first question to Rowan Kennedy and David Hardy. You know, we have a question from one of our participants who asked, do you observe a huge rise in popularity of paid online learning platforms because of COVID? I'll be happy if you could answer in turn. Thank you.
The short answer is yes. There seems to have been a considerable amount of interest, including using the Zoom software we're using today. I'm less convinced about the effectiveness of some of it for the reasons that some of our excellent presentations today have made. I've been involved in open and distance learning for many years and was at one stage president of the rectors of all the open universities in Europe. And we found that it's not just about the technology, it's about how you go about the whole teaching and learning process. You have to rework things from the bottom up, and there needs to be a lot of training of education of both teaching staff and management. And it's a little bit like a lot of the debate at the moment about the digital economy and banks. You don't just bolt this on. There has to be a fundamental revisiting of what it means to learn, where the technology can add value, and simply having a video link or some such in itself is valuable, but it's not an entire solution. And what I'm delighted to see, and we had a presentation which covered UNESCO earlier on. I used to be Vice President for Europe for the ICDE, the International Council for Open and Distance Education, which is closely linked with UNESCO. And they have grasped the nettle by offering assistance to all educational institutions to help them introduce much better online open and distance learning. So out of dark clouds come opportunities, and this also helps, I think, with some of the points that you and others have made about getting good quality education into more remote rural areas. I mean, this is something that I was discussing in Kazakhstan back in the early 2000s. This is where COVID-19 can help.
Yeah, I'll add briefly. Thanks, David. I mean, I think we don't, the British Council here in Kazakhstan, we don't currently offer paid for online education. We do have a number of free offers for various different groups of people. So some of that's through our regular project work, but there's also a number of courses you can sign up to through our website. What we have seen though around the network where we have English language teaching centres and English language schools is that we've got, I think, 47 language teaching centres right across the world. Of those, 44 are currently closed for normal face-to-face students. 34 have already moved to delivering English teaching online, and the other 10 will be doing so by the end of April. So there's been an enormous amount of demand for English classes delivered online. One example I was given by a colleague today was in Vietnam, where we had something like 1,500 people signing up in the space of the first couple of days after we moved online learning for online English classes. So I'd agree with what David's saying. Yes, it does appear to be very, very popular, and there has been a big rise. And B, you know, there is a real potential silver lining here for any organisation like us, and like most of us here on the call who are keen to deliver high quality education to remoter areas using this kind of technology.
Thank you very much. And we have the next question for Natalya Hanley. Are there any known training programs that scientifically prove to be developing empathy in students and or teachers?
There are some programs which were launched at the medical education, which actually help the medical staff to develop the empathy and understand the patients, but I'm not really sure if it's scientifically proved, because empathy is quite difficult to measure. One of the difficult ways, like in order to scientifically prove it, you actually need to do some measurement of empathy, which is seen as one of the quite a difficult thing to do. But I know that some trainings exist, and somebody mentioned about international baccalaureate school in Astana, and empathy is the part of the students' profiles where school kind of target empathy as a part of the skills students have. But the training how to do this, it's a long process, and I think we need to kind of more have more researches on this area and see, and it should be quite a number of people to participate in this research, because we did a project in 3 schools with the different educational systems, and we, to be honest, we didn't really think about measurements. We didn't think about how to, we just wanted to see if there is any contribution this type of pedagogy. And in pedagogy, it's a bit different angle of empathy. So we probably use the principle of empathy rather than target the empathy as a final result, to see if we actually wanted to see what kind of emotions students had because of the pedagogical approach. We wanted to see if they developed it cognitively, they're understanding the knowledge and skills. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but I think we're all talking about the scientific proof as a scholars, but I think we need to be very careful about things. We still need to research more, still need to develop in this area more.
Thank you very much. And may I ask the next question to Dr. Gulmira Kurganbayeva. So the question is, what would be the effect of COVID-19 on the education system?
It's a very difficult question, I think. I think that whole education system can change. First of all, our educational organizations can change their vision, their strategy, and positioning on the market. Secondly, I think that we started to use different techniques, different methods, and using 2 different things like blended education, offline, and combination of offline and online education. Third thing, I think that the mindsetting of our teachers also can change. Now, teacher is not only person who can provide knowledge, but also the person who can be in the family and who can know the problems of family and As a previous speaker said, that teacher now is a communicative person which know not only professional field, but also the circumstances in the family, the situation in the family, who can create the communications with parents, with children. And I think that most of our teachers now must be a good communicator, anti-crisis manager, not only in organization of education, but also in the family. As for me, as a parent, only this morning, I called to my teacher twice. I asked how now I'm in the stress and how I will decrease the level of the stress. For example, my trainers, my lectures of my children said, be smart, be in the good situation, no problems. And I realized that my teacher of my children now is a good communicator with very nice empathy, with very nice stable methods, with stabilization of the situation, not only in the learning process, but in the communications of the family. After post-COVID, we will change our communications with teachers. Parents and teachers will create different communications. And fourth thing, I think that the ministers of educations, the top managers of educations in every country now start to change the policy, the education policy. Because especially in the rural areas, during these days, we have a lot of problems. It's problems about educational platforms. Every school in Kazakhstan must have educational platform. And second, new methods, especially new teaching methods for every teacher, because every teacher now start to create their own personal video materials, but it is not a learning, it's not an online education, it's not a distance education, it's anti-crisis instruments of cooperation with students. In this case, I think we will change the culture of education. It is not easy. I think it is long-term perspective. It's not short-term perspective, but in the long-term perspective, everything can change. Strategy, technologies, the role of teacher, the role of universities, the climate and culture in our families, everything can change.
Thank you very much. May I ask one more follow-up question to you, Dr. Gulmira Kurganbayeva? We have a particular question about how to increase quality of the level of education at rural areas, so at rural schools, with the use of digital and online technology and techniques. If you could kindly give us a bit of advice specifically for rural schools. Thank you.
During last 2 weeks, I have a lot of discussions with directors of schools in the rural areas, how we organize the process of education. And they said that it is very difficult because, first of all, this is the problem of internet communications, and second, we have not any educational platform. Sometimes the parents in the rural area said, okay, it's not education, we're waiting the new academic year, and please continue your teaching process in the new year. In this case, for rural area, first of all, we should provide the good educational platforms. First of all, educational platforms. Second, it's organizing in each area of Kazakhstan, especially in rural area, the special, maybe small centers for teaching excellence, which can provide the education to rural teachers, how to organize the process of education, how to use the new technologies of education, especially online technologies. It's a second thing. And third thing, I think that also we should organize some maybe seminars, some education for parents, for children. Now in this day, I said a lot of aggression from the parents, a lot of aggression from the parents. And you know that on these days, every parent said about doctors, and first question about teachers. Yes, what about, what kind of problems now? Our system of health and our system of education. I think that also we should provide maybe, I don't know, maybe some seminars or some conference, some educational programs for parents, especially for parents from rural areas, especially from parents of new generation, like millennials, like old parents or grandmothers or grandfathers, because this generation now is also involving in the process of education. As for me now, I am involved in our conference, but my mother, as a grandmother of my children, now in the process of education, and for parents, for this different types of generation, it's very big challenge to be involved in the process of online education. I think that we also must organize some seminars, some trainings for parents also. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your informative answer. And I have the next question for Ms. Aybarshin Bolatova. We have the following question. Sustainability should be taught starting from kindergarten, such things as gender equality, environmental thinking, critical thinking, and so on. Is this somehow considered? And since you are teaching at one of the leading schools in Kazakhstan, the Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools, it's quite interesting to learn from you. Do you have any SDG related education at Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools? Thank you.
Thank you very much for questions. Yes, we have some strategies how to connect our, for example, ordinary lessons with environmental issues. But as NIS school, we started with 7th grade students. But according to my experience in to have scholarship in Finland, I was in kindergarten, or not kindergartens, primary schools, secondary and upper secondary schools. And also we tried to include it in our programs that our children should learn some environmental, should learn how to solve environmental issues from kindergarten's level. It can be just investigation of the environment in which they live. Yeah, investigation of home economy, yeah? For example, to count how kilowatts of energy that they consume in their home lives. And also this one is needed, this approach need to be structured. Yeah. So for example, in kindergarten we should start to teach them, yeah, in structured way how to do some things, some little things which helps to prevent pollution. Yeah, maybe which helps to increase our consciousness, yeah, of global thinking. And it can be through cartoons, through films, through stories, something through games, etc. And in kindergarten schools, they should try to do some processes, yeah, in kinesthetic way, for example, to build some wind turbine, yeah, some to make electricity, for example, in simple way. Yeah, we wrote about in our books as well. So and also start to engage these parts of environmental education, start to combine this part of environmental education in school programs, as it's happened in Finland. For example, in Finland, they have some interdisciplinary approach, but one of the interdisciplinary approach of the subjects is sustainable development. And second interdisciplinary approach, this one is entrepreneurship, etc. So not just integrate some main disciplines, yeah, integrate disciplines with this type of approaches. I think my answer is yes, I think, and I hope I answer for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Iverson. And the next question we have is from our partner, Dr. Michael Green from the UK, and he has the following question. And I would be happy if perhaps Ms. Ainur Karbozova could answer it. So the question is, oh, just a second to see that she's not here. Okay, let me just move on and we will ask it a bit later. So we have a question for Ms. Natalya Radko. The question is the following. Vocational training is of utmost importance for employment of young people and building middle class. However, in Kazakhstan, the system of vocational training was destroyed after independence. Today, from my experience, that what is left is colleagues teaching on machinery and technique based on equipment of mid-20th century. How to make this segment of education up-to-date and agile, responsive to the current and future needs of the economy? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Khalida, for the question, and thank you for the participants who have asked it. So what I could say that vocational training is, yes, it's a big issue in Kazakhstan. The Kazakhstani universities are talking a lot about this prospect from the beginning of 19th. But what I would say is that probably now we should think about turning the way and the approach of preparing the students or preparing or teaching those who is going for the vocational training. So as we were talking, or as I guess David was talking before, what the UK educational ecosystem is oriented oriented on enterprise and entrepreneurship skills. So the main important is the skills that students are, or those who are taking the training are getting. And so are we preparing those who is able to be self-employed, or are we preparing those who would be able to be adaptable and work in different projects, take a risk, be part of the good team, and so are they adaptable to work in different areas? So I would say that we could say that it's more about the skills and the abilities that universities are providing in terms of vocational training. I hope it answers the question. If not, please let me know. We cannot hear you.
Thank you so much, Natalia. We have one more question for you. Natalia, you have mentioned that universities need to understand the demand in specialists, which I fully agree with. This is a question from our participant, Saulia. Do you think this is always doable at a university level, especially with account of the Kazakhstani universities' current capabilities? Do you consider any recommendations at the country level which possibly might be more efficient? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Very good question. So before probably proposing this point as a recommendation, I thought a lot about, are universities definitely really able to understand the demand of specialists? But then I was thinking about the Kazakhstani system. Kazakhstani universities, they are preparing students mostly for the local economy at this moment. We are not preparing students for the broader, for the other countries. And probably each university, I would say, is able to build some to build some projections in terms of the specialists. If they work closely with that industry, they would understand the trends in terms of the needs for specialists in this industry. But again, if we would talk from the country perspective level, I would only say that what we can, or what government can do, just give more freedom to universities in terms of deciding which courses or which modules they can teach. Give universities more freedom, and then they would be able to implement those programs that might give more adaptable skills for the students and the learners. We also, for example, even now, within working in a project, we faced the situation that we are not able to implement one of the courses on entrepreneurship that we have developed in Kazakhstani university just because of the government regulations. So they are not allowed to implement additional new modules, which is completely not as university or the module is not related to university direction, but it's entrepreneurship, and it's more about enterprise skills that we want to help develop from the students. So in this case, we see that there is a strict regulations and no freedom that would help to make any changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalya, again, for a very informative answer. And I believe you've answered the question from our participants. And now we have a question for Ms. Ainur Karbozova. So a question is from Michael Green, our partner in the UK. I noticed that all the specialist Kazakh presenters today are female. Is this an indication that for cultural reasons, men tend not to engage with the process of reform and innovation in education for sustainable development? If the gender balance of education specialists is strongly skewed towards female specialists, does this have an impact on the level of financial and political support given to education reform by central government? I would much appreciate if you kindly comment on this question. Thank you. Okay, we will wait a little bit. For some reason, yeah, we can't hear yet, but nonetheless, I believe this is the only question that could be answered by our partners at the level of education from the government perspective. And perhaps if not now, we will later answer this question on Facebook under this video. So let me then ask a question to Janat Tuteshova. So the question is the following. Gender equality and inclusion in the time of COVID-19 faces additional challenges, and experts warning about increasing violence against women and children, as well as for foreigners in different countries. What should professionals, authorities, and institutions in education do for decreasing this negative trend?
I'm sorry, Khalida, because of internet, I missed. Is that addressed to me?
This is addressed in general, but if you would like to answer this question.
Yeah, I think if I may answer, I think in this time it's what is private becomes public. So it's what we have inside of our families in relationship between couples, in relationship between families, and it may cause huge problem. And approaching again from the perspective of engaging parents as parents, from the perspective of the projects that you are running in terms of raising awareness of citizens, of children, first of all, about their rights. So because there are cultural norms that doesn't allow to speak, that it's embedded in the culture that women the role is undervalued. So there are many things at the same time, and this is problematic. So I think from the perspective as a parent, and also from the perspective of my research, I would say that this is the very effective strategy if we consider what parents, what families can bring into education, what education practitioners can bring into families, and capitalize on what we have already. So, for example, in terms of children from socioeconomically disadvantaged background, they may not have access to computers. There are lots of issues that inhibit this learning process. But again, if we consider learning as a process that can happen at home, and think of how to encourage parents to work with their children, to motivate their children, I think it's not about then only knowledge gaining. It will become more about developing child's understanding of the world. So because parents can do it together, they can do the math together, for example, by just counting money, I don't know. So there are different kind of things that already about learning. And I think here it's most importantly is about raising awareness and developing culture of learning together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Janat, for your valuable recommendations. And we now have the final question for our speakers. And this is a question for Ms. Meirgul Alpysbayeva. The question came from our attendee from Facebook. So the question is, in your opinion, what are the opportunities for institutional changes toward education for sustainable development and human rights in the education system of Kazakhstan?
Thank you. That's actually a very good question. Actually, ESD and including human rights education, it should be mainstreamed at all levels, at policy level, so at the level of strategic documents, education strategies, or education sector development programs, also at curriculum level. So curriculum should be reconsidered and updated in terms of mainstreaming ESD and human rights education, as well as at the level of teacher training institutions and teacher training education, because it will be teachers who will be teaching this content, and also at the different institutional levels. And there are already also developed concepts such as ESD whole institutional approach, which are very popular in some Southeast Asia countries. And I know that for example, Narkhoz University in Kazakhstan is implementing this eco-friendly or green campus concept. So they should be also mainstreamed at institutional levels as well. But in terms of Central Asia and in Kazakhstan, I think we need to raise more awareness about the importance of such concepts such as education for sustainable development, human rights education, global citizenship education among all education stakeholders, because it's at the hands of everyone actually, and there are already developed materials, including developed by UNESCO, that could be easily adapted and used by teachers, by schools, by professors at higher education institutions. And as one of the speakers also indicated, is that we shouldn't teach these concepts separately, but these concepts should be integrated in all subjects, in schools, in higher education institutions, in vocational educations, everywhere. And it's bringing all these issues that the humanity face into the education sector. Also, it's also at the hands of the, I think, civil society and civil society organizations also to raise more awareness, to implement more projects like this. And also it depends on the financing and resource mobilizations for such purposes as well. Thank you.
Okay, very nice. Ainur Karbozova is with us now. Ms. Ainur, may we kindly ask you a question from our partner from the UK, which is about the fact that perhaps for cultural reasons, today all presenters are female from the Kazakhstani side, or indeed, is this an indication for cultural reasons that men do not tend to engage with the process of reform and innovation education for sustainable development? And if gender balance of education specialists is strongly skewed towards female specialists, does this have an impact on the level of financial and political support given to education reform by central government? Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Khalida. Thank you, Mr. Green. I do bring my apologies for some of the technical issues I had in the course of the session today. It's a good question, and I think it's just turned out so that today most of the speakers are ladies, and it isn't a sign of less women or men in the field of education. And the bright example and proof for that is the top management of the education ministry of Kazakhstan. So we do have a minister men and vice ministers being also represented by male and female, so it's like almost 50-50 proportion for two of the genders. So I would say the fact of today's speakers being mainly ladies isn't a sign of men being less engaged to the issue of reforms in education. And just speaking about gender balance in the presidential Bolashak scholarship in particular, I would like to say that we do have a perfect balance from program to program, from major to major. So all the period by period scholarship awards do prove that Bolashak is perfectly balanced between both the brightest young ladies and gentlemen of Kazakhstan. So I would say that I think most important thing here is that the president of Kazakhstan, the government, and the relevant ministry do pay and attach significant the great significance to the reforms in education. And the session today and the themes discussed today does reflect the active engagement of all the major stakeholders, universities, individual researchers, and two of the ladies speaking today are actual Bolashak scholarship holders doing their researches in the leading universities of the United Kingdom. So, and Khalida herself is twice Bolashak scholarship graduate, the brightest example of lifelong learning provided by the Bolashak scholarship program. So, and that's my response. And thank you very much. And once again, apologies for technical issues.
Thank you very much, dear Ainur. Now it's time for us to finish our session, and indeed it's been a quite popular session, and we are very happy to see that the issues in education, they raise the interest and concern among all our nationals and people in the region. And again, I would like to thank all of the speakers, participants, and the audience for their active participation. And before we close, let me give the final floor to all our speakers, and you can have now maybe 30 seconds, to share your final words about the topic of our session, sustainable development through education, and maybe you can share your final advice or recommendations how we can achieve sustainable development in Kazakhstan, in the region, or globally. And let me start with Elmira Obry, please, your final words.
Wow. It was a great discussion, actually. Thank you for all of our speakers to bring into the discussion very actual and necessary topics and points of their visions. There are many discussions nowadays about will the technologies conquer the world, will be the place of the human in different sectors and especially in education. I do believe that robots will not replace the people, especially in education. There are many reasons, and we can talk long about this, but the main one is that we are all made to interact human to human. There are some examples now how the machines interacting with the human, but I guess we should not choose just one option because it's limited our perspective and opportunities. So I guess we should to find a collaboration between humans and machines. Coming back to our topics, like technologies will not replace the educational methodology 100%, but it will definitely change it for better. So I guess we should find the bright sides and to use it to enhance our system, just not just to compete and just to create different extremes for this. So I do believe that we can find a pretty effective collaboration between technologies, machines, and humans.
Thank you very much, Elmira. May I pass the floor to Natalya Hanley?
Thank you very much. It was a really fascinating morning here, and it's to be honest, it was really encouraging because when we started the project 5 years ago, it was very rare when people talk about global citizenship and about sustainable development, and now we see Kazakhstan is going in this direction, which is really encouraging, and more dialogues and more discussion will be here in this area, and I believe the education will change and is changing, and this is really encouraging, and just wanted to just encourage everyone who is doing something or preparing to do something in the future, doing the future project in research. It would be really good if people just pick up from over here and go and do something more and develop it more, and we believe that it will change the picture in the general education in Kazakhstan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David, can we ask you to say your final few words of wisdom to all of us?
Thank you very much, Khalida, for an excellent session, very well and very ably moderated, and clearly the future of Kazakhstan education is in very capable hands, judging by all the speakers I've listened to. I would just make one point though, and that is that what has come across from a number of you is how do we get our universities and our technical and vocational education to change? And a lot of what we've heard today has certainly been continually talked about for at least the last 40 years in the context of both countries. and both the UK and Kazakhstan. And I think the focus has to be on who is the customer. If you want the universities and the technical institutions to produce graduates with the knowledge and skills that business needs, then business and other employers need to be more actively engaged. They need to see themselves as the customer. And so long as the major sources of finance are governments, there's a great tendency on the part of educational institutions to see the government as the customer. I'm not suggesting that government shouldn't be involved. I've said at the during my little talk that it's a partnership between government, education and business, and I think that Natalya endorsed that. So how do we get more active involvement in business to make sure that business gets the knowledge and skills it needs, and that then can enable them to capitalize on some of the new developments and the exciting developments taking place in the universities, some of which I listened to yesterday in one of the sessions yesterday on robotics and so on. Fascinating world-class stuff that needs to be exploited. That's about connections, partnerships between business, education, and the government.
Thank you very much, David. And now, Rowan, please, would you like to make your final few suggestions on the topic, please?
Thanks, colleagues. Well, firstly, just to thank you, to repeat the thanks from other participants to Khalida and to the organisers for a really fantastic session, and to all the presenters as well for some really interesting presentations, and to the audience for the questions. I think, you know, I'd echo some of what David said. I mean, it's part of what the British Council are trying to get at, partly with our Creative Spark programme, and it was great to hear a little bit from Natalya about how she's been able to sort of work with that. I think my final words would just be to say that, you know, we are as we have been for the last 26 years, we are here to support. We're always open to new partnerships, and if any of the speakers or indeed any of our audience today feel that there are elements of the development of education they would like to work with us on, our door is, metaphorically I suppose, at the current moment in time, but the door is very much open, and we would love to hear from you and love to sort of take these relationships further.
Thank you very much, Rowan. And now, Meirgul, may we kindly ask you to share your final thoughts with us?
Sure, thank you very much. And I also would like to thank Kazakhstan PhD Association in the UK, and particularly you, Khalida, for inviting me and giving this opportunity to be part of this important session, and as well as to all the speakers and participants on such an unprecedented time. And I would like to say that since all the good deeds and the bad deeds also begin in the minds of people, I think education plays a huge role in educating and building the minds of people with very important topics and issues, and all the skills and knowledge and values that we talked today about. So I think education plays this powerful role, and we need to continue this work, and I wish everyone success and good luck, and also stay healthy and safe. Thank you. Rahmet.
Thank you very much, Rahmet, dear Meirgul. And now may we kindly ask Ainur. Dear Ainur Karbozova, could you kindly share with us your final thoughts about today's session or sustainable development? Thank you.
Khalida, my thanks goes to you personally, and to the Kazakhstan PhD Students Association in the UK for organizing this very topical agenda session today on the sustainable development goals in education. We do believe that the Bolshak Presidential Scholarship is the key implementer of the number 4 Sustainable Development Goal set by the United Nations, which is quality education. And for that, as the administrator of the Bolshak Presidential Scholarship, we are doing a lot. We are undertaking a number of important measures to further improve requirements for the applicants and overall the organizing procedures of the education within the Bolshak Presidential Scholarship, which I have briefly mentioned during my speech at the beginning of the session. And my message today is that these especially challenging times resulted by the COVID-19 did prove that we have to change quickly, and we have to be able to bring some of the innovative solutions to the current challenges that this virus set to all of the countries of the world. And for that, science and innovations proved its even much higher significance for our development in this current circumstances. And my message would be that I would like to request Kazakhstan PhD Students Associations to further encourage young researchers of Kazakhstan to explore actively opportunities within the Bolshak Presidential Scholarship Program and apply for PhD, as it is indeed a unique opportunity with full financial coverage, which has no analog worldwide. So please, we are welcoming all the PhD young researchers to apply for Bolshak program and to contribute to the development, scientific innovative development of Kazakhstan in the nearest future, to be able to respond to all the challenges we are facing these days and would be continuing to face in the nearest future. Thank you very much once again. It was a very informative and useful session.
Thank you very much, dear Ainur. And now I pass the floor to Aybarshin Bolatova. Please, your final few words. Please turn on your mic.
I would like to say thank you for the PhD Association for giving some opportunity to introduce our job. And I want to say that we don't need to change curriculum at all. We just need to integrate some sustainable development goals or elements of ecological culture or etc. to each subject from maybe from kindergarten to the upper secondary school to the university through some projects, through structured way of developing some research skills, critical thinking skills, etc. And we need to change the strategy of the teaching, from teacher-centered to student-centered. And there is a big job for teacher training centers to do something. And if you have some, if you want to ask me to how to do something, because we have some experience for this one, I'm ready to answer to all of your questions. Or I think some Госпожа Miss Gulmira from Teacher Training Center know how to do it, and just we need to implement this all of these things into the teacher trainers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, please, Natalya, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Khalida, and I would like to thank you, the Kazakhstan PhD Association, for organizing this event, and thank you for joining all us together. I was very happy, to be honest, to see and to hear all the projects which our PhD students and others are doing in terms of improving and developing the education system in Kazakhstan. So I hope that we would be able to make some positive changes and somehow improve the quality of education in Kazakhstan. So thank you very much again for the engaging discussion. It was very interesting for me to be here and to present my ideas also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Janat, please, your final words. And the mic, please. Unfortunately, we have some technical problems. Can't hear you, Janat.
A minute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, fantastic. Thank you.
I would like to thank organizers, first of all, for giving us, providing us such an opportunity to share with our ideas. And I would like to take this opportunity and say thanks to government support, Bolashak, presidential scholarship that provide us opportunity to learn, do the research abroad. And I would like also thank the University of Bristol, where I'm studying now. And so my final comments would be, I think we should all just keep working on overcoming barriers to quality education, to equity issues in education, and bring the ideas into practice, challenging bringing critical perspectives to the ideas through research, through theory and practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janat. And lastly, I would like to thank all of us, the speakers, our guests, our participants, the audience who have been watching our roundtable. And I would like to congratulate you because all of us, we managed to contribute to achieving sustainable development in SDG 4. And I'm sure that through continuous active cooperation, collaboration, and partnership, we will be able to achieve sustainable development, not only in Kazakhstan and Central Asia, but globally. And I would like to invite all of you to the next session of our forum, which will start tomorrow on the topic healthcare and sustainable development. For now, it is all from us. Thank you all. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
Khalida.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.